Audio test 1 2 1 2. call this meeting to order.
Come on.
To start the meeting, we'll take a roll call. Board of Aldermen roll call. Madam Clerk?
Denham. Gaines.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Milton.
Here.
Fenton. Whitus.
Here.
C. Here. Your Honor, you have a quorum of the Board of Aldermen.
Thank you. We'll now take a roll call vote for the Finance Committee, please.
Fenton. Whitus.
Here.
Hinckley. Here. Milton.
Here.
Dobbins.
Here.
Yancey.
Here.
Denham. Romine. Here. Buckley. Your Honor, you have a quorum of the Finance Committee.
Thank you.
Do we have to make a call for the Community Improvement District as well?
I don't have that, no.
No, they're just sitting there yet.
That's a good question. I don't know. Because they're here.
I'm not sure if it was posted.
That would be theirs. They post their own.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So Gail Myers said that,
Gail said no. Gail said no.
Gail said no. Good enough for us.
We can move everybody up here.
Oh,
This one,
sure.
and we just need to make another one.
Pam,
You can come up to the big
Come on,
boy
Pam.
here.
Oh, can I? Well, I was
We're-
feeling
we can
like
be
I was
within
just all
kicking-
alone down here at this little table by
we'll be within
myself.
kicking distance
Rod,
of
you
each
can
other.
stay down there with your
I don't know, I
kids, or you
kind
can
of
come up
liked
too.
y'all down low.
Yeah.
This way, one way, either way. Come on. You and.
Oh, you're good. You're fine. We got
Like I'd rather sit next to her anyway.
You don't need that.
Rod, are you moving up there? Yes.
Share this bill.
Don't want to spill my coffee all over y'all. Yeah. I know.
Oh, we're good. Me and Bill can share that.
Well.
Okay.
Clay's
Musical
gonna
chairs
sing the
has,
national anthem.
the
Okay.
musical chairs has concluded.
My feet doesn't touch.
We
the
will
floor
now
of this chair, but-
receive a report from Jamie. Would you like to introduce this?
Good morning, everyone. Just as a reminder, this is a joint Finance and Capital Committee, and what we're here today to do is we're here today to go over some engineering firm proposals. We have 3 companies here to present before you today. We have CPWG, Great River, and Bartlett and West. And so what we're going to do this morning is we're going to allow each of the companies to present. They're going to do a 30-minute presentation, and then they're going to do 15 minutes for questions, okay? So what I would ask is if you could hold your questions until the end of the presentations. That way it gives them the opportunity to get through their entire presentation and then gives them the opportunity to answer your questions. Okay, and as a reminder, this is for segment 1 and 2 for the Highway 76, and it starts out at Shepherd of the Hills and it comes all the way back up to the Ferris wheel, all right? Okay, so with all that being said, if there's no more questions of me, I'm going to turn it over to Todd Chandler with CPWG and let him get started with his presentation.
And Madam Clerk or Chad, would you have a clock running so we can stay on time? Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for attending. Thank you for the opportunity for our team to present on this very exciting project. I'm Todd Chandler with CPWG Engineering, here to really introduce our team as well as the approach for the project. My office is based in the Branson Hollister area, so I've been down here for about 5 years. Because of the nature of this project, with being a very complicated project, we've formed a team of some of the leading professionals in the area that have a local presence. So I'm going to introduce you here in a few slides. I'll introduce all of our team members as well. So. Chad, the clicker's not working.
Did it accidentally get turned off on the side there?
No, it's on. Oh, there we go. It's on now. So some of the reasons that we're the right team, we have experienced local staff with a lot of relevant local knowledge. We've worked on a lot of projects in the area. We also provided specialized professional services in all the different applications for this project. Have an excellent reputation with our clients that we've worked with throughout all the firms. And we also have efficient resources and extensive resources for cost-efficient project completion. We have over 250 combined team members with the 4 consulting firms. We have 2 local offices in Branson and Hollister area with over 20 local employees that live and work in the area every day. We have multiple firms with experience across the board. Our firms, you know, we're going to combine and focus our resources to help deliver a successful project because it is a very complicated project. Some of the local experience, in my Hollister office, we actually, we're under contract to train some of the Liberty Utilities construction designers. Liberty Utilities has facilities along the entire corridor. We also, CJW, Dane Seiler has worked with, they're the sole provider of Summit Natural Gas, all their design work, who actually has facilities along the corridor as well. MECO has worked on the city's stormwater master plan that was completed about 3 or 4 years ago. So they have a lot of familiarity with some of the stormwater issues that the city of Branson faces on a daily basis. And then also, you know, since we're all engineers, we're not exactly the most creative people in the world. So we've teamed with PGAV. They're a landscape architectural planning firm based out of St. Louis, Missouri. You may have seen their work on the Hollywood Wax Museum, as well as the recently completed Branson Aquarium and the octopus that lines the strip now. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, Todd. Good morning. I'm Dan O'Neill with PJV Destinations. And I want to thank you all for your flexibility for providing the Zoom meeting, and our apologies that we couldn't be there in person. But as Todd mentioned, PJV has done a lot of national and international work creating truly unique destinations, and we'll touch on some of those throughout the presentation. But recently we worked with Kuvera Partners on 2 projects locally along the Highway 76 corridor. The first being the aquarium at the boardwalk. So PJV worked with Kuvera from concept through completion on the Branson Aquarium. Part of that collaborative process was the outside the box and like big idea thinking and how to revive the old Grand Palace site. And after master planning efforts and concept discussions, the aquarium was decided on, but there was a desire to really make a statement. And that statement ultimately took the form of the massive octopus that everyone is familiar with here today. And that statement has been an iconic presence along 76 as a beacon, pulling travelers toward the aquarium and also acting as a wayfinding moment. Now, that icon statement is rooted in the story of the aquarium. And the way that we approach things is the fundamental idea that helps drive design in the aquarium and other projects is to pull the essence of a particular attraction or product out front and center and to engage guests and visitors along 76. And ultimately to also follow city design guidelines. And we also followed the Spirit of 76 concept plan in producing some of the pedestrian pathways that you see there. And this design was inclusive of many different companies working with the client, and the end product was ultimately a beautiful addition to Branson. And the second project was the streetscape directly in front of Hollywood Wax Museum. PGAV again worked with Kuvera back in 2014 to develop a concept that pulls that essence out of Hollywood Wax Museum and to the streetscape experience for all people to enjoy and really to experience. And this resulted in multiple selfie moments that guests can interact with, such as the Kong plane and the Grease Lightning car. And again, this was part of a collaborative process with PGAV and Kuvera. Then during the execution, PGAV and Kuvera had actually worked with Todd on the team here on implementation, making it a reality. And so this design ultimately brought a safer, pedestrian-friendly experience to the 76 corridor while capitalizing on the fun and captivating brand of the client and the Branson area. And so these were just some successful projects, along with many others noted in our presentation, that team members before you have been working on in the Branson area. And we are excited to further introduce the key team members here on the next few slides. So Todd, if you want to go to that.
So again, I'm Todd Chandler with CPWG. I'll be the local single point of contact as well as the overall project manager for our team. With me, joining me from CPWG is Ron Daniels. A lot of you know Ron. He worked on the Highway 76 project. Prior to that, he spent his career working for Empire District Electric, now Liberty Utilities. We're blessed to have him at CPWG. He's actually helping to shape the future of some of the construction designers at Liberty Utilities, who is actually working in our office locally. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present.
All right, good morning. My name's Scott Vogler. I'm president of MECO Engineering. And with me today is Dennis Coombs, who's our Branson office manager.
Morning. My name's Dane Seiler. I'm with CJW Transportation Consultants. What we really bring to the team is a transportation background and expertise in that manner, in that we've looked at the corridor before and are very familiar with it. In addition, we do a lot of surveying too, as well as Todd had mentioned, for some at natural gas, but also just in the area locally. So that's something that we bring to the table as well, just an idea of from a surveying perspective what's going on, but also from a traffic and transportation perspective, we give kind of insights into that and help lead the team from that perspective.
And then Dan on the Zoom call.
Hi, good morning. So as I mentioned, I'm Dan O'Neill, I work for PJV Destinations. I'm a landscape architect by trade and have about 17 years here at PJV. As I mentioned, I worked on the Branson Boardwalk at the aquarium as well as the Hollywood Wax Museum, streetscape, and along with other resorts in the surrounding Branson area. And Tiffany Ralston, who wasn't able to join us today, is an architect here at PJV as well. She has a little over 18 years of experience, and she was one of the project leaders from PJV's standpoint on the Branson Boardwalk and the aquarium implementation. And Adam from Planners, also with PJV, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Adam Jones. I'm a urban planner by trade and a real estate economist as well. I've been with PJV for about 4 years. Prior to that, I have about 15 years of experience in real estate economics and urban planning.
Thank you, Adam and Dan. Also not available today is Jack Houseman. He's a local surveyor. You may have seen him up and down the strip. He's worked on the strip for probably 30 to 35 years on multiple projects. So, as far as our locations, our main office in the area is in Hollister. CJW has an office up in Springfield, up on South National. MECO has an office that you can actually see from City Hall, right across the street. PJV is, as I mentioned before earlier in the presentation, they're based out of St. Louis. So they're all within a close proximity to Branson. Some of the local project experience, you'll see the green bullet points are CPWG projects. The blue projects are CJW, red are MECO projects, orange are PGAV. This is just kind of the breadth of the experience the entire team has here in the Branson area. So you see we've got projects all up and down the strip, as well as other major thoroughfares within the Branson area. Now getting more into the specifics of the project, our team's understanding of the project is obviously it's a much needed project. Pedestrian safety, if you're familiar with the strip, there's a lot of, it's kind of a widened shoulder that's serving as a makeshift sidewalk, which is very dangerous. It's not very appealing to the general public just because they're walking right next to vehicles that are traveling with a lot of distractions. So that's first and foremost one of the most important things that were identified early on in the master planning for the Spirit of 76 project, and those are definitely something that our team is keenly aware of. As well as, the infrastructure is definitely aging because Branson has been a booming area since the 70s. And really now it's time to try to bury some of those unsightly power lines that we all see driving the corridor every day. There's a ton of infrastructure because everybody followed along with the power companies and put cables underneath there. So there's a plethora of, you've got telecom, cable, Suddenlink is there, CenturyLink. So obviously trying to get all that infrastructure underground. And the city's already taken steps on previous segments. So if you drive out there now, you'll see them working on segment 3, pulling cable into the underground conduits that we put in place as part of the segment 3 project back in 2016 and 2017. And also, as a benefit of the project, too, is to increase the aesthetics of the corridor, giving businesses an opportunity to partake in redeveloping their frontage along 76 to make it more of an inviting environment for both pedestrians and motorists traveling through the corridor. It'll definitely improve social interaction between pedestrians and vehicular activities as well by implementation of crosswalks, and we'll talk about that here in a future slide too. And obviously these improvements will all help for the entire community as well as enhancing economic development opportunities along the entire corridor. Some of the recently completed, within the past 3 to 5 years, images for the Segment 3 projects that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. Just kind of looking at the overview, you've got the Titanic, including the widened area to basically provide a selfie moment with the ship in the background and nice wide, 10-foot wide sidewalks for people to enjoy and get out of their vehicles. That's right by the intersection of 165 and Highway 76. Looking down, you'll see the seat wall that's out in front of the Branson Ferris wheel. Before, this area was just basically a wide asphalt shoulder with I'd say a 4-foot walking surface that was extremely dangerous, and it was on the back of curbs, so people just they didn't feel comfortable walking along the strip. So now you'll see there's a nice green space separating the sidewalk and the wide sidewalk, as well as a nice place to sit down and relax and enjoy the scenery. You guys all have the slides, so I'm just going to kind of touch on a few of the items here. Some of the lessons learned from early on in the previous segment when both Ron and myself were engaged on the project. Really early on is to establish a line of communication to make sure all parties are getting informed of the work that's ongoing and what the upcoming work is. There are several different parties involved, obviously the City of Branson staff, the CID board. So we're aware of this because just our previous involvement with the project. Also a strict adherence to the City of Branson, their technical design requirements. So making sure city standards are being met on all the sidewalks and utility improvements as they're getting completed. Getting into utility information as far as it's a very tight corridor, so we'll explore different opportunities for some creative ways of bedding the material. So if you ever have to access the line, you're not taking out a lane of traffic. So from a constructability, working with city staff, leveraging experience, looking at current construction technologies to leverage the best solution for the City of Branson. And then obviously exploring funding opportunities to make sure that the next phases can continue and have a long-term funding solution for the entire project. And we'll talk about that later in the presentation as well. This schedule is kind of an anticipated schedule. We showed segments 1 and 2 being designed concurrently. Really, the driving force on the anticipated project schedule is the amount of funding that's available, because obviously the funding is critical, and you want to make sure that you have the money before proceeding to the next phase of the project.
Excuse me, Todd. Chad, can we zoom in on that a little bit?
It's a PowerPoint, sir, and I don't know that we can.
Okay.
Honestly.
Go ahead, thank you.
And I can follow up with that information to you. So to kind of summarize that, it's about a 1-year design, about a 10-month to 1-year design process, followed by a 1-year construction process. In that first year of design, there's a lot of coordination going on with utility companies, making sure all the utilities are accounted for. Everybody's bought into the actual design of the corridor. Also, getting into making sure we're getting all the coordination with the property owners, because we're working across their frontage as well. So seeing their level of interest as far as participation and making sure that the proper easements are in place prior to the project going out to advertisement for bidding. That way there's no hiccups when it comes to construction. As far as the project approach, we touched on the interaction with stakeholders. We would have twice a month meetings with the city to talk about the project status as well as the budget and provide a progress update. So that way the city is well informed. They can keep the board informed as well. Our team is happy to present to the board, whether it be the Board of Aldermen or the CID board. We fully anticipate keeping up, attending meetings with the board to provide progress updates, answer any questions that the staff or board members have, as well as answering any of the public's questions too, because it is a very high-profile project. Also, a important component of the project is coordination with City of Branson emergency services, as well as providing notifications if there is, for instance, an incident across the corridor. So we'll work in conjunction with Ted Martin and kind of build on the Branson alert system that he's done a very good job of putting in place. That way we get to as many stakeholders and public as possible if there is an incident or a lane closure, so nobody comes to the city and says, well, we didn't know this was going to happen. Trying to keep as many people engaged and up to speed on the project as possible. And then obviously working with City of Branson Communications Director Melody to deliver the public message, as well as provide information to provide updates on the city's website regarding the status of the project and upcoming work. As I mentioned earlier, interaction with business owners. There's lots of business owners across the whole corridor, and everybody has their ideas of what they would like to see for the strip. So there'll be obviously a series of meetings between property owners, City of Branson staff members, and CID board members to meet with these property owners to get a good understanding of what the goals are from everybody's side, to see if there's a willingness on their behalf to enhance their property and provide financial support to assist with those enhancements as well. That way everybody can feel like they have their chance to talk about the project and make sure that it's a win-win project for the city, the CID board, as well as the property owners. Coordination with utility companies. This is a very critical component of the project. We want to have all the solutions before it gets issued to bid, as far as make sure all the utility companies are bought into the design. City staff to make sure that they're okay with everything that's being built per the public improvement requirements that the city has in place, as well as outstanding issues being tracked via Smartsheet. This is an online spreadsheet that the city will be provided real-time access with, basically to provide any of the outstanding utility relocations, what the status is, whose responsibility it is to take it to the next step, as well as provide any comments on that particular task. And that'll be for the entire corridor for starting with segments 1 and 2. As far as the design phase, it really is a sidewalk and utility enhancement project. We do these all the time between my firm, MECO, CJW. These are kind of our bread and butter projects from looking at ADA requirements for handicap accessibility, getting utilities underground, dealing with utility conflicts. It is a process, so that process begins with meeting with all the stakeholders, including city staff, CID board members, as well as the public that we're impacting when we're crossing their property. Schematic design is basically the first step after those meetings to start getting our thoughts on paper. Those schematic designs are shared with city staff and the board, as well as the CID board, to make sure everybody understands what we're recommending from a design approach. From there, we'll take it to design development, which is 60% plans that will be submitted for the city to review and provide comments. We can present to the CID board as well as the Board of Aldermen to answer any questions you may have on the plans. And then we'll incorporate those comments and turn into construction documents, which would be the final documents that are basically advertised to contractors once receiving approval from the City of Branson staff members, as well as the CID board on the improvements being shown. And the important thing is, there's multiple levels of submittals. So that way everybody you don't just see this one time, you see it multiple times. And you see the cradle to grave approach. So you see the project from the beginning all the way to the execution of the construction. That way, hopefully, we're trying to minimize any surprises. And then with that, we'll also work with PGAV, who does outstanding renderings, because it is sometimes hard to understand an engineering drawing for those of us that don't look at those all the time. So the renderings help create a 3D view of that. We actually fly the corridor with a drone. So each firm has drone capabilities that we incorporate. So you'll have virtual fly-throughs of the corridor with renderings showing the improvements prior to them getting built. That way, for those of us that are highly visual, you'll have a good understanding without having to read a set of engineering drawings. And then obviously, as part of the construction and design documents, we'll include plans, job special provisions. We'll work with the city staff and Cheryl as far as getting the front-end documents complete and ready for bidding, and then also provide a engineer's probable cost estimate of the construction cost for the improvements. And then as part of the project, we will also assist the city of Branson with the bidding phase. So that will be assisting with the construction contract, as well as answering any questions that come up during the bidding process, and then helping the city with the notice of award, as well as the notice to proceed. Okay. As far as the construction phase, we'll also help monitor, review pay apps that come in from the contractors, answer any questions pertaining to the design as well, and then we'll perform periodic site visits of the project during construction in conjunction with city staff, CID board members, and Board of Aldermen to make sure everybody's constantly kept in the loop on what's going on with the project. And then as part of the post-construction phase, we provide as-built drawings. We will actually work with the city staff as well as the CID board members to generate a punch list for the contractors to address issues prior to the city taking over the project to make sure there's no future maintenance issues that the city has to deal with. Some of the possible wow moments that we've identified early on in the phase, You'll see a possible gateway at Shepherd of the Hills, the Butterfly Palace, Cracker Barrel, Olive Garden wow moment, Slotsky's. These are all identified as possible wow moments along segment 1. As far as segment 2, possible traffic and pedestrian signal at the intersection to Ballparks of America, a Whitewater wow moment, Track 4 and Andy's wow moment, Toy Museum and Track 5 wow moment, the CC's Pizza, that actually was previously constructed, so incorporating that wow moment, as well as a future development wow moment where they're currently tearing down the Stafford Theater and the Caravel Theater.
Further elaborating on the idea of wow moments and gateways, there's 2 particular projects that PJV wanted to share with you that we partnered with planners. The first on the left was a collaboration with Metro St. Louis, where we looked at a transit stop and looked at a way to integrate some of the historical significance of the community, being music, into a sculptural piece and shade and benches. And it was implemented just this past summer and has been a successful addition to that area. Another example was in Asheville, North Carolina, where we were requested to look at some street areas that needed improvement and taking focus off of vehiculars and focusing more on pedestrian. So we looked at parking garages next to a library and came up with kind of wow moments of maybe making it look like a stack of books. And also taking part of Wall Street and adding parklets and green walls and other more pedestrian-friendly components. Next slide. And in terms of gateways, we wanted just to kind of let you guys know the power that gateways can really have. And we really believe that this is a good opportunity here at the Spirit of 76 corridor where you can take advantage of the brand of Branson, all of the different businesses along there, meld them all together and really make it quite an arrival experience for guests as they come through there. Next slide, Todd. And these were just some examples of gateways that have been done both nationally and internationally. Some of these were done in China, other ones were done over in San Diego, but they were all basically taking the brand, the identity of a particular client and extrapolating that out for the pedestrians to really mark the threshold of them entering into this new area. And with that, we'll pass it over to Miko.
Okay. You have this slide here in your statement of qualifications, but we just want to make sure you understand. We do know how to design pedestrian trails, sidewalks. So we've done so in the city of Jefferson. We did 22,000 linear feet, which has a lot of the components that you'll be dealing with on your project.
And this was just a recent project that CPWG completed that all of you are familiar with. It's the City of Hollister Police and Public Works Station that they've currently moved into, and they're enjoying the having the new space as well as the exciting new facility for the entire community.
So at PGAV Planners, again, my name's Adam. I'm with Planners. We attack a multifaceted trade where we're really experts in getting from A to B. We can do a lot of things in terms of 3D analysis or 3D renderings and also quantitative analysis. But again, what we're really interested in here, I think, is telling the story of the community, especially if we were to go after grants and or approach other financial institutions. If you go back to the previous slide, Todd, sorry. So yeah, what we're really good at, again, is applying for grants and telling a story of the community. We've been really successful with previous projects such as Jerseyville, Swansea, and utilizing the Missouri Dream Program, which was the Downtown Revitalization Act passed by Missouri in the mid 2000s, late 2000s. And letting communities achieve their plans and allowing them to bring them to fruition. We have over $2.6 billion in the past decade in public financing that has been issued through our investment banks, our relationships with them. We work very closely with Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Stifel, and we've secured over $28 million in public grants over the past decade. And we utilize a lot of different techniques in order to tell the story of the community. Perhaps one of the most interesting things we can do is use anonymous cell phone location data to look at places in terms of live visitation. Upwards of 3 days ago, we could pull any business on the corridor and look at what visitation looked like, and we can go back as long as 5 years. And all that does is it allows us to tell the story more effectively when we're applying for grants, whether they be TIP, TAP, RAISE, LWCF, or RTP, when we're approaching the state of Missouri for those things. And it also allows us to approach our financial institutions in a much more effective way. So,
Excuse me, Todd. It's important for us to be fair and give everybody the equal amount of time, and so we're pushing the clock now. Where are we at on time?
We're over by about 2-3 minutes.
Okay. Well, we're ready to wrap it up. And
Thank you.
with that, we really appreciate the opportunity to present on this exciting project. It's exciting for the entire community of Branson. I think you'll see with our team that we've assembled a lot of key industry experts to help deliver this project. And with that, we thank you and open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Todd. What an exciting project. Gail Meyer, I want to thank you and the CID team for pushing this along. This is a game changer for our city. Thank you. Any questions from the board or the finance committee?
I think Stan wants to
Oh,
talk
Stan?
first, maybe.
Chad, one of the problems, I want to thank you for pointing out lessons learned. One of the issues that we had when this project began was change orders. It created a financial problem. Let's just call it a problem. I want to make sure we address that up front and that you all understand we expect you, if we choose your company, that we expect a fair and honest and reasonable bid, and I don't come back with $1 million change orders.
Yeah.
That's something that's not fair to our citizens. It's not fair to the board. It's not fair to the taxpayers. So I just wanted to compliment you on bringing that to light. But secondly, one of the other components that I want to make sure we understand is another lesson learned that you don't know about was that our finance department was initially had someone assigned to be in those weekly meetings or biweekly meetings, and they were removed. That will not happen again. I like what I see here. I would encourage that when we, and I really also enjoyed the fact that you're looking at financial possibilities, the team. I like the team approach. I like your local folks because I like being able to look people in the eye. Again, transparency is extremely important. I want to make sure that there are no problems with the finance. I know you talked about it, but I want to make sure that explicitly there's no problems with having our finance personnel in those meetings. Is that okay with you guys? And when we talk about, updates, I want a joint financial report given to the board of Aldermen and the CID board every time that we have a meeting with them.
Oh, yeah, that would definitely be recommended. Finance is probably one of the most important portions of the project to make sure that the project can continue to be funded and there's no surprises, because change orders, nobody likes change orders, from the engineering to the end users, because ultimately the public has to pay for that, being the taxpayers. So having those documents, accurate documents, make sure that everybody's bought into those documents with no wholesale changes prior to advertising for contracts. That's very critical. And we definitely will encourage the city financials team to be in all the meetings. And we'll actually be meeting twice monthly with city staff, including the finance department, to make sure if there are issues, because there's issues on every project that happens, that we hit it with our team's experience as well as in combination with city staff.
I know, it's really, I'll never forget when I was doing an analysis of, quite frankly, what went wrong when this project began. I think it is ludicrous for anybody that's done business here to submit a change order because they said they ran into rock that they didn't know existed. I have trouble with that one, but it's just, we want to, two things, and I've told Keith Francis this. When we move this project forward, if we ever commit the same sins that were committed the first time around, he's the first one to be fired, and I'll be the second guy to be fired. We're not going to let that happen. And I need you all to be part of that team to make sure we don't let that happen.
Yeah, and as part of that too, my firm actually has a general contracting arm. As you look at bullet point 4, we have in-house general contractors to do constructability reviews prior to the plans going out for bidding.
Thank you very much.
And Todd, just a reminder, your response is being recorded. Just count saying it.
Yep.
Mayor, I got just a couple of questions. On the design phase, taking it out a year, it seems to be a little long in that part of the process. If you are selected and you have the opportunity to meet with the SID board and the companies that are undergoing construction right now, being involved in that process, would tighten that time frame up quite a bit. That's just an observation. As I sit on the SID board and I've been listening to these things for 2 to 3 years, I saw some things previously before Stan has raised up that it seemed like if you are selected, you need to be in those meetings, hearing directly from those construction firms, the electric company, the internet company, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The issue of the narrow corridor, I just want to make that, have that part of the discussion, and the streetscape issues. I like the idea of the streetscape, but we have a very narrow corridor. When those of us that had businesses on 76, where the Branson Auto Museum is now, that used to be the Engler Block. And we gave up a lot of our property to give 3 lanes out there. Well, what that did was significantly restrict down that corridor for you to have the ability to do anything, because what you're doing now is you're running into people's advertising signs. I think that needs to be thoroughly vetted. And I don't think it would be as bad in this phase because it opens up a little more than it does further east out there. I'd like to go over again and what the mayor has discussed and Stan has discussed is these issue of change order controls. If it's thoroughly vetted on the front end, we know there may be some, but like Stan said, a change order because of removal of rock, it's all rock. You don't go down very far before you hit rock. The issue of going after grants, it seems like it extends time frame, and if they are done, it just seems like that would extend the length of the time that it takes to construct, because as we've been dealing with our water and sewer issue downtown, Stan, Mayor, will be 2 years, and we still may not have money in our hands yet. That's frustrating.
Yeah.
The last part is just an observation. If you do get access to the Titan IIs, the Vanguards, the Atlases, or the Saturn rockets, you'll please place those out there as a gateway. Imagine NASA would donate those. That's just a joke, guys, sorry.
I just want to say, back to what Stan said, having the oversight and making sure that the finance department is very involved so that we can avoid the situation that we had before. I think it's also very important, and I saw you multiple times list that, the SID board needs to be very, very heavily involved. I think they need to be in agreement with how we move forward along with the city staff, but I do commend you that you included that multiple times through all the phases of that because, we want everybody to be excited about this. We want everybody to be on board. We want everybody to feel like, that we're moving in the direction that we're supposed to.
We are running short on time. Gail, is there anything you wanted to share? Yeah.
Quite frankly, with one exception, to be fair
Into
to
the,
all of the
speak into the mic, please, Gail.
Okay, Gail Meyer, 365 Whisper Ridge. Yeah, I've got a couple questions on behalf of our board, and I do have a couple of those folks virtually. So I'm going to be fair and try to ask all the same questions of all of the people who present. One is, right now, building costs are up. And we did this budget some time ago. We're concerned about two things. If the costs have gone up the way we think they have, then there's two possibilities. One is to extend the timeline on the project, and the other is to deliver less. We really don't want to deliver less. So I guess what I'd ask you to do is tell everybody what your experience is with value engineering and what do you bring to the table to negotiate with contractors. I think the other thing that can happen after this is I'd love to have you think about your company and the city that has done the best job of working with you to do a big project like this, and get that name to Keith so that he's able to talk to them and find out what they did that was right. I think it's good for us to understand the best practices. And then the other thing is, so you were involved in and I think probably this is maybe an elephant in the room, but you were involved in the previous project, which quite frankly didn't work out very well. And I'd really like for you to talk about what's going to be different this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are excellent questions. As far as the price for construction materials right now, that is a major factor that we're dealing with on all of our projects. We will look at value engineering options, so trying to consolidate utilities, get rid of some of the redundant items that maybe aren't needed, to try to reduce cost, as well as look at some of the innovative technology that's on the market for undergrounding. My company has over $25 million experience in utility undergrounding because we're based out of Florida, and it's a hurricane-prone zone, so we have a lot of experience with cost-saving measures. That's something that will come with the design phase. We also could look at, like Gail said, stretching out the project as well. As far as some of the issues that were provided on the last project, the big issue was the plans that were submitted to the contractors at bidding were completely different from the product that was actually delivered in the end. There was, my firm was brought on to do the construction oversight of the project. When we got into the project, there were some pretty major issues as far as the constructability and trying to adhere to a budget. So there had to be some reductions, meeting with property owners one-on-one to talk about expectations. Clay, we worked with you on your project to try to deliver as much as we could while ensuring that we were trying to keep the project within budget, as after, we couldn't build 15-foot wide sidewalks, for instance. So, and it was some of the stuff that was trying to make the master plan happen as much as we could while trying to keep the project a viable option as well. So I hope that answers your question in a abbreviated manner, because I know we're probably right up against our time frame as well.
Ty, when you mentioned that at that time when we were working together at my property, there were a lot of big dreams and a lot of, drawings and money spent and time, and it just, it just never happened. So I think that's a great question that Gail asked, how do we, for my part, there was a lot of disappointment there because, we were promised a lot of cool things out there and this and this and that, and then it just all of a sudden one day it was, it was gone. So
yeah,
I appreciate Gail's question there.
Yep, I agree. It changed a lot from master plan to execution.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Todd, if I understood you clearly, that if we do have any cost overruns or any change orders, we'll just reduce your fees to cover those. Stan, you think? We are running close on time. Is there any other questions or comments from the board or the committee? I'm very impressed. I am so excited for this project. I want you to really hear the message of what Gail shared. We're going to be pushed with cost, the increases in in the construction cost. So the strong preference is not to reduce the quality of the end product, but use the choice of let's extend out that time so the end product is what we want.
Yeah, and kind of breaking it up and doing maybe segment one first instead of both at the same time would be a good option to do. Because I know there's been discussion back and forth on how to do that section, since it is a little bit more open and there's more room, but it is, you know, from a mileage standpoint, it is a long distance to go from Shepherd of the Hills down to Ripley's.
Okay, that's not in my wheelhouse. I think Keith will help shepherd that.
Just for transparency, we're at 15 minutes on questions, just so everyone's.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Mayor, what I'm going to suggest is, you know, let's not let time be the barrier. Obviously, these folks are done. But if they could, if all of the folks could give both the Finance Committee, the Aldermen, and the CID Board a one-pager, two-pager of what they bring to the table as far as negotiation and cost control. And then I think also grants, their ability and past experience, if they would expound on that for all of us, I think that's very important to do up front, not later on.
So that will be something that will be submitted maybe to the committee before we make our decision.
Okay, sure.
Fair enough?
Yep, fair enough. Yep.
I'm very impressed with your firm.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Todd.
Take care.
Okay, so we're going to take just a
We kind of went over a little bit on time, so
Yeah.
maybe 7 minutes.
7-minute recess and we'll hear the next presentation. Okay, let's get ready to start, if we would.
Notice it's the left that's here, not
But we're not the extreme left. We're the middle of the road left.
Where is my peoples? Okay, with the spirit of staying on time, Jamie, before we start the next presentation, I just wanted those here and those that are listening to know that after this meeting, the PowerPoint presentation and any handouts that we received will be available on the website.
That's correct.
So that being said, it's 5 after 10. Let's go, move on.
I just wanted to introduce Great River Associates, but before I do, really quickly, I just wanted to remind, we're going to do 30 minutes of the presentation, and then if you don't mind holding your questions until after that so that we have the full 15 minutes for question and answer. And one of the things I should have said earlier, and I didn't, so I was going to say it now, is that the CID board would like to address this committee after all the presentations are done with, okay? All right, thank you.
All right. Well, good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Jeremy Jackson with Great River Associates. Today, I'm going to be speaking to you as the project manager for the 76 Design Collective. Oops, I'm supposed to wave my arm around, I think.
That was my fault. I apologize. Now if you hit it, it should go. There you go. Sorry.
So before we dive in, you do have a handout there in front of you, and that handout has the pictures of all the folks that are here today that are presenting along with our names, and a little space for you to make any notes or jot down any questions for our question and answer period. One thing that I'll say about our presentation is that we have included in the presentation itself some little, what we're calling Easter eggs, or the 30 reasons in 30 minutes why you should choose our team for your project. So today we're going to introduce our team. We're going to talk a little bit about our qualifications and experience, but the majority of our time today is actually going to be spent talking to you about our familiarity with Branson and talking about the corridor, which we've included here in a big exhibit so everyone can make reference to that. We're going to talk about our project approach as well as a bit of discussion about the timeline. Every project needs the right team, and this team is a multidisciplinary team made up of 3 firms, Great River Associates and H Design Group out of Springfield, Missouri, and Vireo out of Kansas City. And the representatives that are here today are going to address the firms and our qualifications, but we're gonna talk to you a little bit about what we all have in common and what we bring to the table collectively for your project. That creativity and diversity on our team is really what's going to set us apart for your project. So you're going to notice right away on this slide that the faces that are on the slide are the faces that you see here. We're here to talk about your project. These are the contact people. This is the core team that you see on the slide, those folks that are actually going to do the work, that are going to lead the work. With myself as the project manager, Brent Stevens with H Design Group as the placemaking manager, Craig Rhodes, the deputy placemaking manager from Vireo, Mike Beatty. We call him the engineer extraordinaire in our office because he's kind of the oversight engineer, transportation, and all things civil. And one person that is not shown in this picture but has a very key role to this project is for our quality assurance and quality control for the project overall, and that is our founding partner at Great River, Spencer Jones. And so I'm going to turn our slides over to him for a moment.
Thank you, Jeremy. Well, just to give you a little bit of background about Great River, we're celebrating our 25th year in business. We started our company in Springfield, Missouri, and as Branson has grown, so have we grown. We've opened up offices in Kansas City and St. Louis and diversifying our market there and really exposing us to some new ideas and new ways of doing things. And we're excited to bring that experience and education to this project. One of the things that we know from being in the southwest part of the state is that communication is critical. Keeping the client informed of what's going on, understanding your needs and your goals so that we can get those desired outcomes. And a couple of the things that are really critical with that is respect to the budget and respect to the project timeline, and then good communication with the public, which really all of this is built for to help enhance that corridor that exists there for economic improvement and impact. So we're very excited about that. I'll pass it now to Brent with H Design.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Brent Stevens. I'm one of the principal owners of H Design Group. We've been in business 22 years, so I like to say Spencer's older than we are, but our office is also located in Springfield, Missouri. About 95% of our projects are Springfield, Branson area, so we're very familiar with the area, with the folks that are involved. Our motto, and we've got this up on our wall, we don't have clients, we have relationships. That's really important. You'll kind of hear that through the theme of our presentation today. But we do bring that expertise. We have 21 staff members and very excited about this project. So I'm going to let Craig introduce his.
Thank you, Brent. What an exciting project. I actually, from Kansas City, I come down here probably 2-3 times a year, just to enjoy it. So it's exciting to be down here in this capacity. I am a landscape architect. Vireo's been around for about 27 years. I've been practicing for about 29 years. You know, we specialize in creating quality spaces. Jeremy asked us to join the team because we know along the way there's going to be those interesting moments that we can really thrive on in the corridor. We focus on trails, parks, streetscapes, corridor projects, city-wide planning projects. We kind of, the big umbrella for us is we have a division of public engagement. We've built the backbone of Vireo on that public engagement and the community and working with them. And, you know, really, it's about, for us, it's about bringing a creative and artistic approach to this and just kind of making that excitement just thrive. So we're going to get into, and we're going to go fairly quickly through some experience that was in your packet previously, but we're going to kind of step through these fairly quickly. First one I want to talk about is Lenexa, Kansas, suburb of Kansas City. This project, one of the big things here was they were creating a new city center. If you've been to Lenexa, you'll see that it's out on the western edge. And they were moving all of their civic facilities out there. It includes retail, civic facilities, libraries, and housing. And so the big vision here was, what do we do with the roadways? They decided to do something very different. They went to all one way in this area, which was pretty different for a city like Lenexa. So what we had to do is see this big vision, look at the land use master planning, and then bring that down to scale. And Vireo, as you see on the slides, we did all the visioning for them. We brought it down to the street level. You can see the stars that plays off the mimic of their culture and their logo and what their city is about. We had lots of sustainability solutions in this project, but it was really just about creating an identity for them in this new city center. The second one is we're really proud of. We just finished this. It just got constructed. We're about 1.5 years ago. This was a garden space for the Ronald McDonald House in Kansas City for the families that stay at the Ronald McDonald House when they have children that are sick at the hospital. You can see it is based around a butterfly. And we came up with this concept to show the meaning of life and the greatness of life. And we worked with a private donor on this. They got a very large donation to build this garden, so we could get very creative. You'll see, there's lots of contemplation spaces. It was for families to be able to get away, relax, and really just enjoy the moment of them getting away from the hospital for that little bit of time. And it does at night. We underlit all of this stuff. It just comes alive at night.
I want to show you some architectural stuff, some fun stuff. But yeah, so we've real quickly, the City Utilities bus station downtown Springfield. It's a federally funded project, so we had a lot of that interaction with those folks. But I think this project's an example of how urban planning can come together with architecture and how those two engage each other. Interior and exterior spaces really kind of bleed together. This project had a heavy focus on security, accessibility, sustainability, and low maintenance materials. And also, I like this one coincided with a public street project, so we worked very closely with those groups to make that unified. Another project, picked out a few projects that we felt were a little bit more relevant. Silver Dollar City, we've done several projects with Silver Dollar City over the years, and are actually currently working with Great River on another project right now. I like to highlight this because everything that Silver Dollar City does has a theme, it has a story. I absolutely love that because it allows us to really design for that story and universally do that throughout. And B, everything that happens at Silver Dollar City is very heavily pedestrian focused, right? We're not dealing with vehicles inside the park, so everything is thought through from the pedestrian perspective. The last one I want to show you real quick is Fritz Adventure. This is probably familiar to you all. Fritz, Branson's a very changing demographic, and I think we're seeing that. Spencer's going to talk a little bit about this in a minute, but we're definitely seeing more of a shift towards family-friendly stuff along the Branson 76 corridor, and I think that this one is an example of how some of that can start to interact. Some of the newer developments, we're starting to see buildings push up towards the road, parking getting in the back, some of those things. If you've driven by there, you see they're actually putting zip lines out in front. It's really try to engage that pedestrian activity to come into the building. So those are some projects that we worked on.
So we worked with H Design Group on the Grant Avenue conceptual design, and what we really want to convey here is that, when we look at long corridors that are in excess of a mile or more, we actually have to look at the very diverse land use types and the owners and the folks that we need to get input from, and folding that into a streetscape so that we can create vibrant areas where people can gather requires good communication to the public, developing those graphics and developing those ideas and communicating the way that you see on the screen here is an important part of that process. Findlay Farms at Ozark Mill, if you're familiar with it, is a Morris family development in Ozark. This was previously a blighted area, and it is completely a destination development. We worked with them to honor the historic value of the city of Ozark and the mill there on the site, moving an old historic bridge to cross the Findlay River for pedestrians. So it's a very significant project for that community. And in fact, it was very sustainable, not only from an economic development perspective for the development, but for the community as a whole, and also sustainable to the environment. It was blighted, it was industrial in nature, and it has now transformed into the gardens that you see there. They actually grow the food, harvest the food, and they use the food in the restaurants and the coffee shop, as well as hosting the farmers market. Route 66 Corridor Management Plan, what a crazy project that was. 466 miles across the state of Missouri, looking at all those small communities and trying to identify what the economic development possibilities could be in each one, and honoring Route 66, which means helping them find things that make them unique, all of those little delighters that those communities have that allow people to stop on the route. And we're talking about foreign travel. When we did that, we won some design awards, but probably our crowning moment, frankly, for this particular project was doing the application for the National Scenic Byway, which we were awarded the All-American Road designation, which is the highest designation for a National Scenic Byway in the nation. We also were able to take that experience and translate it into something that was a little more local, doing some work in Springfield, creating a roadside park that is visited by people internationally. We took that from the conceptual and neighborhood meeting level all the way to fruition. We really pride ourselves on getting things built. To be honest with you, we love the visioning. It's important. It's an important component. And communicating in that way with people and getting that buy-in is great, but we really want to get things built. That's what we pride ourselves on. Saying that, we were fortunate to be involved in the downtown Branson Phase 3. Now, this was a project that had already been started, and we picked up Phase 3, and we did the Commercial Street and Main Street intersection part of the downtown Branson project, building on the good things that had occurred with regard to design, and still taking that and making it special in and of itself. So we love Branson, and this city is very unique. And so Spencer is going to tell you a little bit about what we've learned about Branson.
So I'm sure you're all very familiar with the 2019 visitor profile study that was completed. And so we use that, and I'm trying to understand who the end users of this system are going to be, and what their needs are, and how they perceive Branson. And we know that there's 4 key things to that. One being family friendly, and we're seeing that in the demographic trends that the city is observing the benefit of. Great live entertainment and amusement opportunities that exist throughout the 76 corridor in the city as well. The beautiful scenery, our Ozark Mountains that means so much to us and is recognized to the visitors that come to this area, whether it be the vista views that cross the valleys or the crystal lakes that we have and the opportunities that exist with those. But we're very proud of that, and that's something that visitors to this area and our guests to this area recognize. And then the other important thing is safety. One thing that they report is that they feel very safe in Branson and in this corridor. And with that safety, it gives them that freedom of opportunity to go out and explore the different businesses and venues that exist along this corridor. The other thing that Branson is seeing, which is a big benefit, is the 9.1 million people that come here per year. And 83% of those people are actually driving to Branson. So we know we've got that vehicular component with this corridor. And then also that 57% of those people that are driving in are from beyond 300 miles out. So this is a much larger reach and interest of people coming to this area. And again, it's for those 4 key reasons that we see. And then 2, 50% of those people are bringing their families. And that may be grandparents with their kids and their grandkids, or parents and their kids. And so you're seeing that demographic shift from an older generation to a younger generation that are looking for those opportunities. And you can see the corridor responding to that. The redevelopment that's happening in the corridor, the new buildings and opportunities that are going up, and the economic enhancements that are taking place there. You can see that livelihood taking place and excitement in the corridor as well.
So we have looked at the corridor a number of times, and as you can see, we felt like it was important enough that we put it right out here where we can all see it. You can see it on my screen as well, and let me tell you a little bit about the inventory of information. The inventory of information about the corridor, it's about a mile long. And one thing that we've learned from research on our other projects is that folks are willing to walk about 600 feet So ultimately, we'll want to look 600 feet on either side of the corridor. That's a comfortable walk to come in. And that 600-foot distance, we're not limited to that, but it's an important part of how we draw people into the corridor from the outside. We've got 3 major nodes, of course, at the Ferris wheel location, or the point of beginning in this case, as indicated on the map. Then we've got a midpoint at Pat Nash Drive, and then, of course, our terminus, which is at Shepherd of the Hills Parkway. Those nodes are important to us because that half mile is a pretty easy distance. People are willing to walk about a half mile and recreate, if you will, or experience in that half mile. We are a primary arterial on West 76. We've got 2 major intersections. One that's, of course, just off of our, project area here, and the other is Shepherd of the Hills Parkway. And we have a number of local road connections. Those local road connections are extremely important to us because they're pulling people in, both from the vehicular standpoint as well as from the pedestrian standpoint, potentially. In any case, they're connecting other parts of the city immediately adjacent to our corridor. The most interesting thing about the land uses in the corridor actually are that we have a variety of things. One community church in this vicinity. We've got 20 entertainment venues, 11 lodging venues, 8 straight-up retail venues, and 10 retail restaurant venues. And this is what I'll say. A family could literally come and stay in this 1-mile corridor for a week and never run out of anything to do. And when we're done, they're going to want to do that. Our commitment to the design of the corridor is we are committed to being responsive to you as directors of the project, but also to create identities and a sense of place over and over and over in the corridor. We want to create delightful opportunities and experiences, things that are happy surprises in the corridor, discoveries as people are walking along. We want to be responsible to the investment that you're making. That fiscal responsibility is extremely important to us. It's something that we measure all the while that we're going through the design process. That creates fiscal sustainability, but we're also interested in creating sustainability from the perspective of creating spaces that are going to be there for a really long time, places that people will enjoy for a long time. And those creative design elements are key on this project. We also will be very respectful, not only to you all as project leaders, but also to the community and ultimately to the contractors who are going to be building this. This is a team project. We're all on one team. We want to make sure that we get this thing done as a team, and being respectful to each other is really how we get things built.
So I know we're getting a little tight on time. I'm going to try to rush through this. We can come back to this, but basically there's 3 phases. How do we implement what Journey's been talking about? You guys had kind of outlined the 3 phases that you want us to look at, and so to dig into that a little bit, conceptual design phase. This is where we basically have 4 subcomponents. This is discovery, creation, agree, and execute. Okay, discovery is fact-finding, is surveying, is getting all of the data, brainstorming with the folks to understand what the parameters are, the goals of the project, and that sort of thing. Create's where we have fun. That's why we're in this business. We have lots of fun when we're creating and coming up with ideas. Usually that's done in some sort of charrette setting or something like that, where there's a lot of involvement with the end users. We need that input because it's a think tank, and we want to get all of that. We're not going to go off in a bubble and come back and say, voila, this is a very interactive process. Agree, obviously, we want to make sure everybody's on the same page and we're unified as we go out to the community, and then just execution. And I'll talk about execution in phase 3. Phase 2, I think Mike's going to talk a little bit about funding options, but phase 3, how we execute, we've got a good track record. Everybody on this team has a really good track record with quality drawings, thorough drawings, well vetted out, and so we feel pretty confident about that.
So Brent already mentioned the different phases, but one of the things I want to talk about a little bit just in this infographic is this. When we're going through that process, we understand that it is all about communicating. We communicate with you, you communicate with us, we put that information into design, and we bring you back a product. Then we all evaluate that product together, and we start that process over. That integrated design and project management component is extraordinarily important to us at every phase. It's not just one meeting or two meetings, it's a constant communication process, whether those meetings be in person or we're actually virtual for part of the time to make things convenient for folks. We want to make sure that we are talking, that we are communicating. We set up our projects that way and we find success and ultimately constructed projects out of that process regularly.
So, again, on time, real quickly, I just wanted to, we threw up this is a shot of the corridor. We all know what it looks like. Obviously, it's very vehicular centric. Developed when it was developed, that's understood. It's really neat to see that you're already starting to change that perception and start to bring buildings up to the edge of the street, creating more of a pedestrian-friendly environment. If you've all been to Broadway Street in Nashville, it's a good example of getting those buildings up against the edge, creating that livelihood, open up those doors, and wanting people to, when they drive here and they park at one venue, they want to walk to 4 other places and spend more money than driving in, doing their show, and driving out. We want them to stay, and that's going to be our goal here. We're going to create beauty, art, excitement, lots of activity, places for gathering. As Jeremy mentioned, delighters along the way, picking those moments where we can do that. Comfort for the pedestrians, safety. We can't change that the buildings are set back and we have parking in every location, but we can still pull those forward with other different opportunities, with pulling park events or coming in with spaces for outdoor gatherings, cornhole, large chess games. Let's get activity, let's get people enjoying the corridor outside and not just indoors.
5 minutes.
Thank you. I've been doing engineering and infrastructure for 35 years. And from wastewater treatment to roads to transportation, the hardest part of any project is getting the money to do it. I can design a large project in a matter of months, but it can take years to get the money to do it. And so one of the things that we appreciate or recognize in your plan, you got a specific phase for funding. And I think that's important. Our team is well suited for that. We believe in taking projects from envisioning all the way through fruition, and we recognize the importance of funding. Great River, 40% of our projects involve some type of federal funding of a number of types. There's a list of the different projects, the different funding sources that we've used. There are others that are available and that we've also used. Great River has done more than 300 federally funded projects in the Missouri region. We're familiar with we did Tiger and Build grants, the precursor to the current RAISE grant, looking at ARPA funding and economic development. Years ago, economic development funds were limited to just industrial or some type of manufacturing type of programs. With COVID, that's changed. Tourism, retail, or types of businesses or something that qualifies for economic development grants. The ARPA funding, there's more money available now because of COVID with the RAISE grants and ARPA. There are billions of dollars available that we think the community should pursue. We're working on projects now that look at governor cost share grants where we do public-private partnership, And one of the things that we want to incorporate in the plan is that leveraging of the money that the community has committed to the project, and see if you can make that go farther. And so that ties in a little bit to the overall project. I'll go to the, yeah. What button am I not hitting? All right. Talk about schedule. We start off the project, and probably the first kickoff part will be that conceptual design. And we believe that we can be finished with that in October, and depending on how the funding applications go, we could begin construction by May of next year and be done with initial phases based on funding within a year after that.
There's more to talk about on the schedule, and hopefully if you have any questions about that, we'll be able to further elaborate on the timeline in questions and answers. Our commitment to you is to be responsive, respectful, responsible, and delightful. We look forward to the street party at the conclusion of the project when it's built. Thank you so much. We'll take questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board or the committee? Or Stan?
Yes.
Stan, go first.
Some of you are local.
Yes.
There's no secret that when this project started, we had problems. We do not want to see a repeat of those problems. When I did an analysis of what went wrong, and I'm very happy to hear you speak of financing, because we did not have our ducks in a row. Financing has got to be our first priority. To that, with that being said, I would anticipate that a couple of things. I would look at whatever firm is chosen. They are our kind of our protector. They are the ones that will alert us if they see an issue. One of the decisions that was made initially in this project was, and I apologize, I can't tell you why, but our finance department was removed from the meetings. That should never happen, and it will not happen. I told Keith two things when this project kicked off. First, that it was going to be his responsibility to work closely. Secondly, if it went south, he was the first one to be fired, and I would be the second. I do not want either of those things to happen. One of the things that I saw that was just shocking to me, and it's the reason I talk about local folk, I will admit I'm not from here, but the first thing I learned when I got here was there's a whole lot of rock here. Change orders because a construction crew didn't know that they were going to run into rock, in my opinion, are unacceptable. I expect an honest bid. I don't expect people to give me a short bid and then know they're going to, well, we'll just throw in a change order for $1 million. I can't have that. I'm a real transparent guy. I want to get this out and up front. I would like to make sure that you have the understanding that I expect you to help us with this if you are the chosen firm. And secondly, I would, again, one of the critical problems that we ran into from an analytical standpoint was we did not have the funding sources secured prior to beginning construction, which is like buying a car with no money to pay for it. But those are two things that are key to me, key to this city, because I have a responsibility to protect the Board of Aldermen, to protect the citizens of this community. And I need whoever's chosen to help me do that. Are we completely clear? And again, I apologize, it's really not too much of a question, it's just making sure we have an understanding.
No, I appreciate that. We are completely clear. One thing that I want to say is, well, I have several things to say, but one is throughout the process, the design process, it is absolutely, I mean, from the kickoff meeting and the establishment of what we think that budget needs to be, moving through as we go through that design development and identifying what the particular improvements are, we're going to be benchmarking on the budget. And that's a report at every meeting. We begin our meetings with a report on where we are on the budget as we have that information. As you all know, on every project, as we fine-tune the design, those numbers are kind of moving, and that's something that has to be communicated to you. We know that there's going to be a mark, but the thing I like so much about the process that you've outlined with the phases is that when we get to the conclusion, even with that first budget in mind, we're going to be weighing out what are the opportunities for additional funds. We want to leverage the funding that you have. You have some funds set aside already. It doesn't make any sense to just spend those funds and not come back and dovetail funding that could be available to you, whether that's a RAISE grant or an economic development grant or any of the other things. We have unique opportunities at this time. COVID may have done a lot of things to us, but one thing that it did do for serious is it created economic development opportunities and funding out there that didn't exist before. And so we believe that that's how we leverage the projects and get more out there on the ground. Again, we believe in implementation. We like to see things built. And then to your point about rock, we are from here, and we know that rock is a real thing. Sometimes it's solid, sometimes it's pinnacled. One of the things that Great River has done to add to our services is we have a geotechnical drilling operation. And so should there be the necessity to actually do some test drills, and holes so that we can see where the rock is, we can do that and figure that out before we actually get to construction documents that are blind, if you will.
Any other Yeah, go ahead.
I'll give you an example up front. Rock is everywhere. You won't have to ask anybody. When we did the Ozark Road, Epps Road, Fall Creek Road extension, you guys may be aware of, I was chairman of the city's transportation committee, and we had arguments with the design firm about how it was going to be. And I looked at them, and they said, well, we're going to go this particular direction. And I said, well, you can't. Why not? Because that's an entrance to Ozark Cave. And they argued with us and got in the middle of it. I don't know how long it took them, Jeff, a year to delay, because they went right in the middle of Ozark Cave. Point being, you don't have to have anybody around here tell you that you're not going to hit rock.
True.
The issue Stan hit up on, because Aldermen, raise your hands just real quick so they can see who we are. Jeff, we all made a promise to our voters, and Stan said, the mayor says it on an ongoing basis, to keep an eye on our city's finances. And we I was not on the board at the time. I don't know if any of us let them down in that process, and things got away. We don't want to see that happen again, so I support what the mayor said and Stan said about heavily involvement, and of course the SID board. I sit on that as well, and our chairman is Gail. You know him very well, to keep an eye on it. But it is, I can't say it ever so strongly, that we have to control our cost, and the issue for somebody who did some building before, the issue of change orders getting out of the way, and Larry and I talked about it before we broke off, is how can we control that moving forward down that strip? Because our old building, the Engler Block, is where the Branson Auto Museum is. That's a much narrower corridor up there. You don't have much room to go into before you go into somebody's signs. And I don't think you're going to see Stampede wanting to give up a lot of their property over there around their sign. I'm just saying that needs to be looked at. But how we can affect the control of costs by pre-buying stuff for the other parts of this construction. It shouldn't cost, I'm just going to go off the wall, $10 for a yard of concrete, and then the other part of it wind up being $40, $50. I mean, there has to be some way to control costs, and that we would ask for you, and I think demand, to watch our back pretty strongly.
Absolutely. Yeah, please.
So one of the things I want to give you a heads up on is that between us collectively, we probably bid about a dozen projects a month in this region. So we're very familiar with the construction trends, contractors' availability, what the cost of providing those services are. So we stay we probably stay up to date on that cost more than anybody in this area. So we've got good, accurate data that we're using to judge that against, and precedents for that. So as we go through this every step of the way, we'll be using that as our gauge as to what the market's doing, because if you don't watch it, it does get you in trouble. And we are always respectful, like we've said as a team, we like to build stuff, we like to see our projects built, but it comes down to the budget. That's where a project gets built. And so respecting that budget and schedule is how that happens, so.
You know, and just something just to end with, we're going to keep an eye on the project because we promised them. We promised the businesses that pass this, we're going to stay on top of it. We're going to be their eyes and ears. We're not going to be so overly involved that we interfere with what happened, and that did happen before. And I think that came back to bite us just a little bit.
And then I'll add too is that, you know, being from this area, I mean, growing our business over that 25 years, reputation is important, and trust. And so we wouldn't be where we are today if we weren't respectful to the communities that we serve, and to the people that they look to guide those projects through. So that is at the heart of what we do. We know we work for you, we work for the citizens, and we got to be mindful and respectful to their money and dollars. And then throwing off another is that making sure that traffic control and those businesses are able to operate during construction so we don't have any negative impact. Being cautious of the season that construction takes place and what those potential impacts are. So this is where we live and this is where we work, and we know how it works around here.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Nope, you're all good. Gail? Gail, you're on.
So I'm Gail Meyer. I'm the chairman of the CID board. And we have a couple questions, and to be fair, every firm will hear this. You've addressed some of these, but, and we've got a couple of asks. I want you talked about cost, but I also want you to spend some time talking about value engineering. And we've got two asks. One is to give us the 1 or 2 pages. Let's put the rubber to the road. Tell us why you're the best at value engineering, why you're the best at negotiating with contractors. And then the second part of that is we'd like to know what city, and it could be more than one. Obviously, you have 3 firms. But what city you've worked with that the relationship and the project was the best. And please get that to Keith or Cheryl, because we'd like to know why it was the best from their perspective and what the best practices were.
Y'all don't all volunteer at once.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm the engineering lead, but we all take a close approach or consider value engineering. Part of that is the design process. It's an iterative process where we look at something, you involve the budget, so a lot of value engineering comes to play during the design. Occasionally you get a project where you've bid it and something comes up and you have to find a way to get it built within the budget. I know that recently, I can just give an example, City of Marshfield, we're doing a roundabout with a cost share program with MoDOT, and the only way to fix the intersection was with a roundabout. It had 6 roads coming in at one intersection, just an odd duck. And we were able to we worked with MoDOT, we looked at grading alternatives, utility alternatives, different layouts of the roundabout, and even right-of-way purchases. But we met with MoDOT's engineers, we met with contractors, we met with utility providers. We got them in one big room, and we sat down. We were able to, we had a budget of $1.8 million, but at the time we did the value engineering, or it had to do the value engineering, we were looking at almost $3 million, 2.8. And we were able to get that project done, figure out how we could adjust the grading and the stormwater and some of the utilities and get that done with $50,000 to spare at the end of the project. By the time we were done with final payments and everything, we were $50,000 under budget, when a year before we were almost $1 million over, or a little over $1 million over. So I think that you know, value engineering is good engineering. You want to try and pay attention to the budget. You want to look at alternatives and consider them. And then you also want to involve experts that aren't me. I mean, a lot of times I'll look at something and I have an idea of how a road has to be built, but I'm not a contractor. I can say, hey, this is what the finished product looks to be. A lot of times we'll bring a contractor in. We work with a lot of bridge contractors, road contractors, dirt contractors, and you'll bring them in and say, how would you do this? And sometimes they look at us and say, you're crazy, this is how I would do it, and we make adjustments. And I think that's just good design, and we try to incorporate that through the project, and our gauge is we're looking at that budget. And that's why the budget is something that every time we meet, every time we do a design iteration, we want to look at how that impacts the budget. And then that tells us, okay, I got to do some tweaking. I got to think of a different way. And so that iterative process, I think one of the examples, if you saw our project management, you had a red arrow at the top we're going back and forth, back and forth. That's that design process where it's iterative. And value engineering is just that process on steroids. You know, you got a major problem. Let's get everybody on board, communicate, talk. What does the city want? What does the CID want? What does the contractor, what are they looking for? What are their concerns? How can we alleviate those? Those are all things that we take into consideration when we do value engineering.
Got a quick question for you, and it was the issue of grants, and it's usually the time frame. You apply it, and sometime between the age of now and the time you're 75, you get it. What is that wheel like right now as far as approval process? Those are usually long, drawn-out process. Is that because of CARES and COVID and ARPA funds or whatever you want to call it? Has those timeframes been shortened at the application timeframe before you actually receive the grant award and monies flow? Has that been compressed a little bit?
A little bit. There's different ARPA funds, and I'm going to let Spencer step in a little bit as well. But you know, grant applications are always a competition. You know, when we did the Build grants and Tiger grants, you're competing against communities all over the nation, and they're federal funds, so they're special grants, so there's a little bit of you know, you got to make sure you have your voice heard. But there's process. We got to do a value engineering or a cost-benefit analysis with each one, and go through and show that it's beneficial and show how it impacts the community. So there is time in preparing the grant, and then every grant program has a deadline. Sometimes it's a review deadline. CDBG is different than rural development grants, federal highway grants, depending on which one of the 40 or 50 different applications you're going after. Some of them will have set deadlines to submit, and then they won't decide for a year or so. And so what we will need to do in the design process, and part of that specific focus on funding, is identify what parts of the project apply to certain types. We might go after 6 or 7 different funding options to leverage the money that you have, and so every program has a different deadline, a different time. Almost all of them are, you know, there's some political aspect of it, so you want to be sure and communicate to your representatives how important it is so that they can fight for you on that behalf. But it's there is more money now than there ever has been that they want to commit, so they want to spend money. And so the timing of this project, I think, is ideal. Would you say, Spencer? I mean, I
think that's the basis for my question.
Yeah.
The monies are ready to flow. You've got these grants that are out there. Are they being circulated out to projects like this that you all have seen, or are we breaking new ground, trying to go that direction?
We're at 15 minutes, Mayor.
Yeah, excuse me a second before you respond. How much time did we go over on the first? It's important to me that all presenters get the same amount of time.
We went about 3 minutes over, and we're about a minute over now.
Okay, so we need to wrap this, just to be fair to everybody. We can have that discussion. What I'd like to say is, Jeremy, the questions that Gail raised, that he asked for a 2-page summary, we're going to be asking that from each presenter, and we would like to take that information in consideration before we make our decisions. So if you would get that to us, and does anybody have any, other than Alderman Skanes, anybody have any short questions?
Oh, I got a lot of them. I was in economic development as assistant director at 2 districts
Okay.
for years. I get it.
I want to speak to the value engineering for 30 seconds here, because me, the landscape architect, I like to call it value design. And what we do along the way, especially in streetscapes, is how can I spend the same dollar for multiple things? And if you've been in Lenexa, you've seen over I-35, the big truss system, that was our design. We were a part of that. Well, it wasn't just a beautiful art piece, it also gave us a place to hang lights. And all of the signals there, we treated that way. You may want a separated grade crossing across 76 Country Boulevard. Well, that's also an entrance, and it's an identifier for coming in. So you gotta think of how we can spend, especially when you say infrastructure. You know, if we have bus stops or shelters, or we got a stopping point, how can we work with an adjacent property owner to make their really cool thing outside of their building be that shelter? We just did 2 things with that same dollar. And that's what I want to say, it's value design. We try to hit that up front.
Very nice. Okay, I would like to conclude, say thank you very, very much. I'm very impressed. This is a project that obviously our city is very excited about. And with the help of all of us, we're going to see it to the end. So if you would provide that information, and again, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate your time.
You bet. Jimmy, we'll take a 7-minute break. 7 minutes.
This is Chad with the IT department. Can you, Ann and Dave, can you hear me okay? Okay, good. So I'm here with Neil, and they said they are going to do the presentation, so it'll be on the screen, you'll be able to see it. They'll advance the slides and you can speak. So you don't have to share your screen. You guys are good with that?
Yep, sounds great. Thank you.
Good deal. All right, I'm going to mute you again here for a moment, and then you'll be able to see us when we start. You'll see the video, you'll hear everyone, and they can interact with you.
Thanks.
And your, excuse me, your video won't be on the screen, only audio, just to make you aware. So you can leave it on, no problem. It's just they won't see you, they'll hear you though.
Okay.
Okay?
Thanks.
All right, Ann and Dave, we spoke internally here with your team, and your video will be on. It'll be a small thumbnail on the presentation. So just to let you know, that was their preference, and so we'll do that. It just won't be the full screen, but you will have video on.
Perfect.
why we merged the two committees.
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
But I know. Trying to head it off, you know, because
right.
I voted, so they just moved forward. But we didn't, and if you weren't part of that, it's like, oh, by the way, now we got to figure out.
We were just
How
getting
we're
all the
gonna pay.
invoices on my desk, and we were like, what?
I know,
We have payroll to make.
I know. I just.
Okay, 7-minute timer's gone off. You are here. Okay, we will reconvene. Jamie, would you introduce the third presenter, please?
Yes. The third company is Bartlett and West, and we have them here to present. Just as another reminder, they're going to do the first 30 minutes of their presentation. I just ask that you hold all questions until after that and give them an effort to make it through their entire presentation, and then question and answers. And a reminder, once they're done, the CID board would like to respond. Okay? Thank you.
Okay. So before we get started, just so you know, the two previous presenters, to keep it fair for everybody to have the same amount of time, each one of them went over by 3 minutes. So I'd really respect to we'll keep our time commitment to everybody, okay? And that didn't count against your time.
Oh, that works great for us, so. My name is Neil Brady. I'm with Bartlett and West Engineers. I'm based out of Springfield. I just want to first thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you guys about this project and this and what our team could possibly help the city fulfill this project and make this project a success. I'm a lifelong Southwest Missouri resident, except for the brief moment I lived in Rolla to go to school, but I think I was at home more than I was at Rolla, because not a whole lot to do in Rolla. But I just want to share a couple of things about the Strip and my experiences there. I grew up as a child. We used to my family would go to Table Rock Lake, spend the day at the lake, then come into Branson to participate in the activities and the entertainment and the dining venues. And some of my fondest memories are eating at Coe Garden Restaurant on the east side of the Strip, sitting on the floor to eat as a child. How can it get any better than that? Also remember going to some of the shows and coming out and having a bright, new, shiny bumper sticker put on your car. Those days have changed, but those are some of my fondest memories of coming to Branson as a child. Now I have my own family. My kids have grown up coming down to Branson as well, spending days at the lake, then coming into Branson to have fun. You know, riding go-karts at tracks or going to Titanic Museum or any of the other number of options that are out there. So it's been part of my life growing up and still part of my life today. So when this project came out, notification of this project came out, it obviously piqued my interest. It's something that I've grown up with. So I started thinking, okay, how can I put together a team that will best benefit this project in the city of Branson to make this project a success? So we started thinking about some of the things that we needed help with on this project. First thing we talked about was, okay, communication. You know, engineers are naturally not the best communicators. So communication is a strong part of what makes a project successful. So we started thinking about, okay, who can we partner with? Who can we build a team with to help us with that? Shockey Consulting is the team that we came up with. Shockey Consulting has been engaged in communication for infrastructure type projects like this for a long time. They work with engineers all the time, so they know how to make us talk and communicate better. So that was a primary focus that we had for this team was, okay, who can help us with the communication? So Shockey Consulting was that. Next we thought, okay, this is a big project. This is something that we're looking for a wow factor to make sure that the Strip becomes a destination on its own. So we reached out to Alta Planning and Design. They're one of the nation's leaders in basically active transportation and complete street projects. They have a resume all across the country of doing projects similar to this. They also bring to us their large knowledge of federal funding. They've been successful applicants helping communities apply for raise grants and other type of federal grants. They've been very successful at obtaining those applications and recently helped Springfield with their recent raise grant as well. So they bring all that to us as well. Then Bartlett West, our strength is the engineering. Our strength is the infrastructure design. We have a long history of working on sidewalk ADA type projects, probably one of the top in the state for that type of work. So all that together, that's the team that we've kind of put together to help make this project successful and drive this project forward. I'm going to introduce some of the people that we have with us today. We have a couple of people online that were not able to redo their schedules. They were able to be here the first 2 times, but the third time got us. So from Shockey Consulting, we have Ann Frame Herzog. She brings over 20 years of communication experience through projects similar to this. Also, she brings a unique perspective to our team as well. She also worked in marketing for the movie and film industry. So being the entertainment area that Branson is, she kind of brings that knowledge base to us as well, so that to help us through some of the ideas and stuff like that as well. So she'll be online with us. And then Alta Planning, we have Dave Foster. Dave brings over 16 years of experience in doing complete streets and pedestrian-friendly streets. He also brings us a lot of knowledge on the federal funding side that I talked about earlier. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ann with Shockey, and she's going to talk a little bit about our communication.
Well, thank you. Yes, at Shockey, our specialty really is engineers. We love engineers. It's really a key reason we have our job, so we're really happy with that. And I am really sorry I can't be with you there today. I really like to be in Branson, and we'd love to meet you in person. But since I can't be there, I thought I'd bring a little Branson with me. I don't know if you can see him over my shoulder, but one of the things is Shockey has been working with communities across Missouri for over 20 years. We've working with them to get the information and the input needed to make good decisions and move forward. Communications within our project team and Branson is highly valued by us, and it's really why we are a complete team. The first thing when we do on a project like this was we develop the plan. We will take what you've already done and accomplished, and we're going to build on it with you and your team, and we'll drive the project through open and clear lines of communication, making sure that everyone is on the same page, from the team to Branson to your key stakeholders. And we create a communications plan, and as any good plan, we really adapt and evolve it as the project develops to make sure that the project stays on track, on time, on budget, and we eliminate surprises. We know that none of you like surprises. We certainly don't, so we really work to eliminate those. And this shows on here one of the tools that we like to use. It's called an outreach matrix. And it's basically, who do we need to communicate with, how, and when? From the city of Branson to utilities, property owners, businesses. We'll work with you to expand this matrix and put the check marks where needed. And what we do is, the next slide is we have the proactive plan. As we said, our proactive plan, it's going to build on your past knowledge, and we're going to outline a program of engagement that really identifies the stakeholders that we referenced before in our matrix, your businesses, organizations, your vested partners in the public. Work with you to make sure that we have the level of engagement and outreach. We've adapted a matrix here from the IAP2, which is the International Association of Public Participation, and that we set the participation goals where we want to promise we need to inform, where we need to involve and consult. So we really have a defined plan that meets your needs. And this will also include engagement goals and objectives, our targets and our audiences, and we'll determine our stakeholder priorities. We'll develop key messages, things like it's good for Branson, family friendly, what you've had in the past, and how can we build and evolve it to make sure that this plan really works. And we'll determine the input needed. For instance, Dave is going to talk about designs a bit later, and we're going to be working with him to make sure you get, and the team gets, the input you want from the alternatives. Next slide, we also know that when you involve the stakeholders, you've determined who those stakeholders are and you want to involve them. When you involve them, you build consensus and support. And so we'll use these different kinds of methods to help build that support. We can have stakeholder discussions and focus groups. This is where we can really learn and listen to what's important to them, their concerns and challenges. We could have a workshop or educational events where we can show alternatives and solutions and get feedback. And we also use surveys in person and online and other ways to show alternatives and ask questions, get feedback. And we can also track these to make sure we're getting inclusion and the diversity of your stakeholders to make sure that we're really getting everybody that you want included. And we can make sure that they're answering that. And if we haven't, we can alter our plan, like we said before, to make sure we're getting what you need. And through all that, we use our outreach toolbox. We have an extensive toolbox. We've developed it over 20 years, and we're going to bring that with us to Branson. So we'll work with you and the project team to see which of these tools will help us to make sure that you get the awareness and input you need from the stakeholders you need to engage to ensure a successful project. From the more traditional to really utilizing some of the new virtual environments and technologies we've learned over the last couple of years. Here, you see here, there's a couple of things we call our engagement stations. And like the tall one there, that's a box we used in Lee Summit, where we had an iPad and we put this in libraries and different public places where they could be overseen, but people could go on there and they could fill out the surveys, and was a way of kind of really graphically getting people's attention and then getting them to engage with the iPad. And then the other one you see is that cube, and that's basically we use that in O'Fallon, Illinois, where we created these cubes and codes and we put them out in various public places, and there's QR codes on there, and with some brand new, it gets people to go scan with their phones and they engage and answer input and encourages the input from public spaces. So any of these tools we can use, whatever we know that is going to work the best for you, because communications is more important than ever, and within the project team and with you as we develop the plan and get the input and the consensus you want for this project. I'm going to hand it back to Neil now.
So like she was saying, you know, a lot of those tools are tools that can be used, and just showing you examples of what could be used to help engage the stakeholders through this process. I'm going to talk a little bit about utility design and coordination. Obviously, we understand that one of the major goals of this project is to put the power lines underground and then dealing with all the utilities. You can see a picture of the corridor here. We've got extensive, almost every project that we've ever worked on deals with utility relocations. Currently working on several in Nixa and Springfield and Joplin that are street widening projects, but are still impacting utilities and having to coordinate with that. Another reason why we have Shockey involved was to help with that communication, to coordinate with those utility companies and to be able to make sure that that everything gets coordinated and no surprises down the road, because that's obviously one of the biggest things of any type of project is surprises down the road. Another big piece of this is obviously the Strip is one of the biggest economic drivers for the community. We understand keeping that open and keeping access to the businesses along there are a crucial thing that needs to be done. We also understand that begins at design. So we're going to work with Alta and make sure that any designs that we come up with are able to be phased, able to keep lanes open on the Strip, and also during construction, making sure that working with the contractor to make sure that the phasing plans work and that everything is able to keep open and running. One thing that we propose introducing on this project is subsurface utility engineering. Subsurface utility engineering, there's multiple phases to that, or levels to that. Most projects do the first two, which are basically research maps, and then mark them on the ground and then come back through and survey whatever's been marked on the ground. You see the paint and the flaggings. We are proposing to take this a step to the next two levels. The next level is basically the picture here where you pothole using vacuum trucks to find out where those utilities are located exactly and the elevation of those. You know, the stuff on top of the ground, you don't know how deep they are, you don't know anything except it's there. So We're proposing to do that. Also, the next level of that is the ground penetrating radar. That then can also map utilities that we didn't know were there. It also, a side product to that is it also can help with identifying rock as well. So that's something that we're proposing to utilize on this project, just because we know that always causes a big concern, and especially with budgets and during construction, hitting utilities that we didn't know were there, or even rock that we didn't know was there. It does, you know, some of the benefits that utility conflicts are reduced, reduced cost. Yes, it costs more up front, but the Federal Highway Administration has done a study that basically for every dollar you spend on subsurface utility engineering, they saw $4 in return in savings during construction and during design, because you're not designing for conflicts that may not exist, or you're not hitting something later on in the field and causing lots of money problems at the end. And then obviously the safety is enhanced during construction, because we know we have a better knowledge of where those utilities are located. So that is something that we're proposing to bring this project just to help with some of the issues that we've seen on projects similar to this. A little bit about our sidewalk and ADA design. Bartlett West has become one of the leaders in the state of Missouri for sidewalk and ADA design. As you can see here, we've done over 119 projects and 42 clients in like the last 5 years. So we are very knowledgeable about sidewalks and ADA compliance on meeting those, and we bring that local expertise to this project to help drive this project to success. And at this point, we're going to get in a little bit about grants and funding opportunities. I'm going to turn it over to Steve. Steve is our grant guru here, so he's going to talk a little bit about that and some of the opportunities that may exist.
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, so it goes without saying that you're going to need someone with expertise in designing sidewalks. As simple as it may seem, there are things that can arise in the design if you don't do them correctly, and that have to be done. So ADA is a big part of
Excuse
that.
me, Steve. For people listening, would you speak into the mic, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
There we go. I can hear myself. Awesome. So I was saying that we are experts in sidewalk design. We do a lot of MoDOT's ADA work because they're in a consent decree to get that done. That's contributed to that. We have also done sidewalks from very rural to very urban areas. So that is an expertise that you're going to need, even though it seems simple, that we've cut our teeth and learned a lot on that. And that started about a decade ago because there were grants that were available for sidewalks. And we started doing it. It's really a niche we've built. We've got groups that are dedicated to that. For instance, right now, Kansas City has 3,000 miles of sidewalk. We're going through there evaluating for ADA compliance. We're working with Alta to prioritize which ones they should repair first. And the point of that is that we've worked with Alta before. We've worked with Shockey, so this is a team that we trust. We didn't just come together for this project. So that is a benefit for you as well. There's not an unknown because as local people, Neil and I, we're putting our name on the line for them. So we're bringing them in. So on that local aspect, as we were doing this, Neil talked about the bumper stickers, and I remember coming here as well, and I remember not as pleasant a memory because when Dad pulled the bumper sticker off, the paint came with it because we didn't have the benefit of chrome bumpers. So I remember that conversation when we started talking about it. So what I want to go into now is the grants. So 26 grants in the last 5 years, $5 to $10 million annually. And this doesn't include the grants that counties will get just for bridges, and they just select the consultant. These are competitive grants that we help the client obtain. So there's an application process, not where the city received the money grant from the federal government, then just selected the engineer. We were on board in helping with them. Some of the acronyms below it are TAP, TEEP, SRTS, CDBG. Those are sidewalk type grants or transportation related ones. And a big part of this is not just being involved and talking about grants, just being proactive and bringing them forward. So for instance, last week, Missouri DED was talking about tourism grants. I think $20 million, and it's coming down the pipe. And as we hear about that, and as I hear about it, that's what I do with clients we work with. Give a call to Keith or whoever it may be and say, hey, here, this is coming. It wasn't unexpected, which I think we're going to be seeing more of that coming down the pipe and just assisting you in that process. And a big part of grants is really interesting. I think growing up in Southern Missouri, having grants and just working hard and making sure things are done and do what you say you're going to do, When we do those grant applications, we put a budget to those before we do the grant application. That's well before the project's done. So two things that does, that helps us keep the budget, because that is our reputation on the line for helping you put those budgets together. The other thing is a drive schedule. So, for instance, I think raise grants, April 12th is the deadline that's coming up this year. We'll go, all right, April 12th is the date. We'll start backing it out and say, all right, we have to do this at this time. And we're not going to be bashful about driving you. If you say you want to pursue that grant, to say you have to meet this deadline. If you don't, we're going to give you a call and say, if you don't do this. So we will be proactive project managers on this job. And with that, so we're good at local grants. There's also national grants that we're not so great at. And with that, we knew we had a weakness, and we wanted to bring in a partner, and that's Dave with Alta. They have that expertise on the national level. And so Dave's going to talk about RAISE, and one thing in particular, if you could pay attention to her benefit cost analysis. That's a very technical approach that he has to perform to apply for RAISE and federal grants. They are the expert. Federal Highway Administration uses their template. So we knew when this project was coming up, they are the best in the nation at that. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Dave.
Thank you, Steve. As Steve mentioned, we've had a lot of success with the RAISE grant program dating back to its original form as the Tiger grant program. And, we've really, every year we submit applications for our clients around the country. Just in the last 3 years alone, we won over $100 million for our clients. And, we're familiar with the process. It does change a little bit every year. So we're very tuned in to when that NOFO comes out, that notice of funding opportunity, to understand the nuances and changes from year to year. But, we have a firm grip on it. We have a dedicated team that puts those grant applications together every year. One of those recent grant wins that you may be familiar with is the Grand Avenue Parkway project in Springfield. It's similar to your project in that it's really a vibrant streetscape corridor type project. Multimodal, includes both vehicular concerns, but also pedestrians. And we think that this experience could really help us put together a strong grant application for you if that's your desire in the future. We also have experience not only authoring and writing these grants, but also implementing them on the back end. I myself wrote a winning grant application for Teton County, Wyoming and Teton County, Idaho a couple years ago. And now I'm working on the program management team to actually see those projects implemented. There's a series of transit and pathway projects connected to states. It was about a $26 million grant application. So we understand how to write the grant, and then we also understand all the things that go into the implementation on the back end, the logistics, the paperwork that the feds are looking to see to understand that you're doing what you said you were going to do. Steve also mentioned the benefit cost analysis, and that's kind of one of the most daunting aspects of the RAISE grant program. It's a very technical process, but we have a team of analysts that are able to show your project in the best light possible. We look at all the different impacts of your project, whether that's environmental benefits, greenhouse gas reductions, healthcare savings, transportation cost savings, safety benefits are typically a big driver. And we're able to quantify all those benefits to, again, show your project in the best light possible. I will say that RAISE grants are about 50% on technical merits, and then another 50% is kind of political, but your project can really be sunk before it gets off the starting block if you don't put together a technically sound and compelling benefit cost analysis. And then grant implementation, I spoke about our experience doing that a little bit. We've worked on 3 or 4 different Tiger grant or RAISE grant projects in the past couple of years. This example from Kalispell, Montana was a rail trail project that included a number of complete streets improvements, and we worked on the design team to actually implement that project as well. So again, we have that experience kind of from beginning to end of delivering successful grant projects. Now I want to talk about the fun stuff, the design, and how these solutions will really be customized to Branson. Steve and Neil talked about the importance of sidewalk design, and I guess I just want to lean into that as well. It seems simple, but it turns out to be very complicated when you're talking about limited right-of-way, utility conflicts, drainage. And so we think the success of any great street starts with a solid pedestrian-friendly foundation. We want to make sure that there's enough room for families to walk side by side on the sidewalks. We want to make sure there's crossing opportunities so that they can get to all the great destinations along the corridor. We want them to have shade, amenities like benches, wayfinding, so they can understand, and navigate the corridor better. All those things really come back to having a great pedestrian experience. And so that's kind of will be our first step, is making sure that we can provide that really comfortable and inviting pedestrian realm. Then we want to talk about how we really customize that to Branson and how we create a placemaking toolkit that creates a unique experience, activates the corridor, and provides little opportunities for people to gather or take a picture. And for this, we'll really want to learn from you in terms of what's worked well in the past. We understand from phase one, and you've invested a lot in the planning of this corridor to date. So we want to understand what's worked well and what's not worked so well, so that we can leverage the things that you've done in the past, but also look to improve on things that, may have proven to be maintenance challenges or implementation challenges. So we'll be looking to identify things like landscaping, material palettes, wayfinding, gateway features, all different types of things to really create that cohesive corridor and that memorable experience for visitors to Branson.
Got about 5 minutes remaining, Mayor.
Thank you. Then in the next slide, you can see here how we really bring that whole palette and toolkit together into a comprehensive approach. This is another slide from our Kalispell Raise Grant project. You can see there's lighting, there's recreation in terms of a bouldering wall. You can see different material palettes, seating opportunities, landscaping. We're really adept at bringing that toolkit together to create a cohesive experience, and then creating graphics and images that the public can see how that's going to be applied and understand what the final product is going to look like. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Neil to close us out.
So now you can kind of see some of the reasons why we picked some of the team members that we picked and what they bring to this team. And basically, why us? Why our team? I think, throughout this presentation, we talked about driving this project to completion. And the main things we talked about was a communication, open line of communication, make sure that we're communicating well with the city and vice versa, and then all the stakeholders as well. The design and grant experience that we have that this team brings to the city for this particular project, the placemaking, the opportunities that Alta brings to us through their experience nationally of doing projects similar to this one. And, all this is driven to make sure that this project is a success, both financially and the long-term benefits of this project. And as I started with, I grew up coming to the Strip. My children have come here. I want to make sure that the Strip remains a destination for my children's children and their children's children for years to come, to make sure that it becomes its own destination, and then obviously from that then drives the businesses and entertainment venues along that strip as well. So that is basically what we have for you today. We are excited about this project. Like I said from the beginning, when I found out about this project, it was something I said, hey, how can I put a team together that would help us make this project a success? And that's the team we've got together, and hopefully you'll find that to be the case as well. So,
Neil, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We're going to start our question and comments, and we'll start with Stan. And Gail, I'd like you to be next, please.
First off, you said something that really, you cannot know how much it touched my heart, and that was ground penetrating radar. You know that this project started, and I'll just be blunt, it was a disaster. It was a disaster because the funding was not in place for the project, which created so many problems, it's unimaginable. But one of the things when I did an analysis of what went wrong, one of the big ones for me was change orders. We need you, or the firm that is selected to do this job, to be our shield, to be our champion, to make sure that we are on track financially, make sure we're on track with proper design, and then with proper construction. And when I started seeing change orders because we found rock, I was flabbergasted, because while I'm not from Branson, one of the first things I learned when I got to Branson was it's rock, which is good because it's rock solid. But I just have trouble with any construction team or design team that is from this area not knowing that they were going to run into rock. So we have a budget. We will live within our budget. I know that costs are ridiculous in the construction area at this moment, at this time, unfortunately. And we've heard today it is kind of a double-edged sword. While we understand that the costs are up, we also understand that there's tremendous opportunities with grants right now. We need that help. We need those eyes. We need the interaction. And one of the other things that I'll never understand, and it's something that will not happen, was for some reason our finance department was removed from meetings regarding this project. The finance department is responsible for the financial well-being of this city, and I will anticipate and expect and demand that they be in regular meetings with the design firm and the construction firms. So I need to make sure that we are on a clear path and that we are focused on a good outcome, because the bottom line is we're all working for the citizens of this city, and I have to protect my board. I have to protect those citizens' funds, and it's important to me that you know that, and that I have trust and belief in the design firm that's chosen to do that. And so I want to get that out up front. It's more of a statement than anything, but I want to make sure that you guys buy into the fact of pretty much everything I just said, and that you're on board with it.
Yeah, and I will tell you that that's part of the reason why we built the team we built as well, is that communication piece is going to be a big piece of that as well. Definitely something that we work with every client that we work with, and we understand that even though you said the city and all that, but it's not just the city. I mean, you guys are an economic driver for the region, so we understand that this is a big deal, and spending the money. That's why we focus so much on the funding opportunities to help supplement some of that as well. But also, basically, the project management of this would be to we're not going to. If conversations occur that say, well, let's look at doing something like this, well, that budget's going to be that first thing to come to mind is, okay, what impact is to the budget? Does that negatively or positively? So I think, yeah, those are things that we definitely are well aware of, and that we plan on driving this project forward and making sure that the budgets stay in check, and making sure that whatever's added or subtracted from this as we move through the design, we understand what impacts that has to budgets and to everybody moving forward.
Thanks, Dan. Gail?
Yeah, so I'm Gail Meyer. I'm the current chairman of the CID board. And you did a good job of talking about, and your folks did a good job of talking about grants. What I'd like for you to do is talk about value engineering, why you're the best at value engineering, and why you're also the best at negotiating with contractors. And then after this, and we're doing this with all firms, is we'd like the 1 or 2 pager where you put the rubber to the road and explain to us all why that is, as well as providing to us what you think is the best project that's been run by a city that you were involved in, and so we can follow up and find out why that relationship was as good as it was, and maybe institute some best practices. Okay?
First one, value engineering, I think, was the first one. So basically, as Steve mentioned, with our sidewalk and ADA projects across the state, that's one thing, we know sidewalks, and this project is a lot to do with sidewalks, but obviously there's other things involved as well. But through those processes, we've learned how to understand where things can be done design-wise that will benefit and value engineer to make sure that those are the best choices. Long-term maintenance and upfront cost to install. Also, with any of the other features that we may end up incorporating in this project, I think it's all those knowledges from the projects that we've been involved in across the state, understanding those. Alta brings a large chunk of that as well in the projects that they've been involved in, understanding what costs and what alternatives there may be to be able to make sure that we stay within those budgets and so forth. So I think, I hope that answers your question. I don't know, Steve, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, so we're not a low-cost provider. We're not a low-cost provider. And one of those reasons, digging in the very minute details, is we have a QA/QC process. Pretty much every firm will tell you they have that. We actually have a separate budget item that we have another engineer in our company that's not affiliated with the project, does a review before plans go out. So that's one way that we do it, among other things. I do want to address the trust issue. So if I went to Chick-fil-A and got sick, I'm probably not going to trust other Chick-fil-A's, right? So knowing the path you've gone down, we welcome those checks and balances. We're not going to be offended. We're not so confident to say we don't want to do that. And we'd be happy to share how other cities, maybe in your similar situation, have said, all right, we got to have this signature before it happens. And change orders, before they are agreed to, they should be approved by the person that's going to write the check, so they know ahead of time. And if we do our job right, you're not going to have schedule challenges that we're going to say we didn't have time to do it. It's not unknown to us, the history and issues you've had, and so we're like, all right, how can we help? And the high level, just what we know. We don't know all the details, and so that's a big part of what we came to approach this project.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Gail, we were asking all three presenters to provide us that two-pager of what you're requesting. I think it'd be fair to notify all three of a time frame we're looking at to receive that so we can move forward. Okay, so if...
Could I just kind of weigh in here? I understand what you're asking for. I have no problem with them providing it to the CID board. The issue that we have as a city is we are not allowed to consider anything except what was in the RFQ from this side of the table. And secondly, Jamie was going to say this when she hops up there, but we'll be asking the Finance Committee to vote on the 24th of February to give you time to absorb some of what you've listened to today.
Okay.
So what I would say, and we want your all's input, what I would say is if you could get those items to them maybe within 7 days or so.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that input.
So just dig into that a little bit. I'd hate to take up our time to do that. So it's a list of our clients, so you can give them a call and reference, and we're not bashful about doing that. I've been here 7 years, not bashful about you contacting any of our clients. And so that's the question you're not asking is, give me a reference for your worst project, right? How you handled it. So every firm's going to be able to give you a great project, and we're going to give you some great projects because we're a great company, and we really want the job. So we'd be happy to do that, and we'll certainly give you the most similar projects in that.
Okay. How are we doing on time?
Got about 4 minutes. Sir.
Okay. Other than Bill Skanes, anybody have any questions that would require a short response? I'm just kidding. Bill, any questions?
No, it's just a statement that we've made to everybody, which is very important on our side as elected officials. We know what you guys know what you're doing. All three that have presented to us have been very, very good about that. It is the eyes that we need to put on the project to ensure that it happens in a meaningful manner, a very expeditious manner, that you work with us to control those costs, because we have been entrusted with the public's trust to bring this thing forward. And the folks that you see in front of us, in front of you, have been vetted with that or vested with that. And it's extremely important that we have somebody that has our back, because you've already know that in previous statements, somebody didn't have our back somewhere, and it got exposed pretty bad. And the taxpayers have entrusted a lot to us, and we want to live up to that trust, and we need help doing it. And we see that as part of what y'all's job is, come heck or high water. That's just part of it, so.
I think a challenge you're going to have is construction prices are raising. You know, we're going to look at grants. It's going to be a real challenge for you. And some of these grants you're talking about have a long lead time. So are you going to want to wait till that grant happens, or you want to just go ahead and throw some money at it now to start the design? And some of that, if you get the design done, helps you apply for the grants. But they're going to roll out fast. The administration right now, we see it. They're pushing it for the reasons you would expect, right? They want it to happen while they're in office. With that, Dave, I mean, the RAISE grant, which was Tiger and Build, I think it'd be worth Dave giving you an idea of what that schedule looks like even. So you've got a realistic expectation. You know, it would be difficult to come, we can't come in here and say you can probably make an April 12th application, because Dave's work on benefit cost analysis for other entities right now. So it might be difficult to do. So Dave, do you want to speak real quick about RAISE? Because I think it's a super important part of this, so they have an expectation of large dollar amounts.
Yeah. You know, ideally, we would have 4 months to put together a RAISE application. We've done it in less, but you know, you want to have your costs, really dialed in, which we don't at this point. And because you're going to be on the hook to deliver that project, whether your costs are covered by the RAISE grant or not, that's part of the agreement that you sign with the feds. So the more time we can have, you know, the better application we can put, the better numbers we can put into it that'll keep you covered and protect you from, you know, those costs, and you can pass those costs on as part of the grant program. You know, it's always kind of a crunch between the time that the NOFO comes out and the time the grant applications due, but we generally know the NOFO is going to come out between now and April typically, so we can definitely work ahead and be ready to go for that grant when the notice of funding opportunity actually gets released.
You have a couple minutes left. Anything else you want to share that you'd like us to know?
Just on Bill's statement about, you know, that's one of the reasons why we put an emphasis on communication on our side, is to make sure that we are listening and we are understanding and we are transmitting to you guys what is going on with this project, and not just budget, but everything, and making sure we're getting that line of communication back and forth. You know, we won't be shy to push for answers and to make sure you guys are understanding what's being said, and that, again, that's been one of our driving factors of this team and why it was put together the way it was.
Thank you very much. Take a break. 7 minutes. Yes. We'll take a 7-minute break. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
No, I haven't. Let's go ahead and reconvene.
Time limit?
Who we missing?
Clay's checking with the boss to see if it's okay to stay out after dark. All right. Hands out of your pockets. What you doing?
Stand here.
Before we start with Gail, I'd just like to make a couple comments. Those that are listening, that may be tuned in later, all the presentations that we've received today and the information that's been provided to the board will be on the website for the public to see. And for clarity, I know we heard several times from Stan some comments about the hiccups that were made on this project at the beginning. And I want the public to know that we're taking this very seriously and we're doing it very methodically. There was a lot of lessons learned the first time we went through this. And the hiccup was in the $10 million range.
Approximately.
Yeah, give or take. But I'm confident that
22, actually.
22 million? Start adding up after a while. So with that said, I'm very confident with the process that we're going through. And Gail, you're on deck.
Well, thank you all. I mean, the CID board is very appreciative of the fact that we were able to have this meeting and have all of you here as well. And you probably know we pushed for the ability to interview all three of the respondents, which I think is not normal, but I've found that you always learn something. And there's several things I want you to think about. What I want to try to do is put this on behalf of the CID board, put the framework contextually around these presentations. And so let's go back and remember something. What's the end in mind? And really the end in mind is that we'll have a positive business result of profitability designed around theaters and attractions. That's the end in mind. And if we increase the profitability and the sales tax revenues in theaters and attractions, then the restaurants, the retail, and the hotels will follow that. So that was the end in mind. And so how did we get to this point? Well, who do we have on our board? Obviously, we have Mr. Skanes, Mayor Milton, and Mr. Whitus, who all are very familiar with tourism and West Highway 76, which is the artery to the heartbeat of Branson. We also have Brian Casaboom and Steve Presley, and Chuck O'Day has been listening virtually. We've also had Mary Kellogg and Brad Thomas listening virtually. We asked them to help advise us as we went through the scoring process on these firms. But all those folks they know how to run projects. They've had some experience with these folks. And really, if you get right down to it, all of the creative expertise is in that board. And really, the CID's interest is twofold. One is funding, and the other is the creative side. We don't really have much interest in the undergrounding of the utilities, and that's not really true. We have interest, but we understand that that's a city function. And what we bring to the table as a CID board is what's going to happen above ground. So structure-wise, in preparation for that, we hired Ann McDowell, who's here, and she is charged with a stakeholder committee of people who would have the vested interest on 76, as well as a committee or board or panel, whatever you want to call it, of those folks in this community that are the most creative. And she will organize them as well as work with the design portion of these firms to make sure they get the real sense of Branson and the real sense of our customer base. And that's part of just making sure that we're solid and that we know that we have a success. I think also as part of that, Chuck O'Day just is a gem for the community, and he just finished a big project on 76, and we had him explain to us how they managed that project. And out of that, Stan and I have had the conversation that we would consider, the city would consider hiring an integrator, which gets paid for by the CID. And what that really means is probably another firm, which is a point person, who is on the city side of things, who is a member of a firm that brings the resources of the firm to bear and make sure that, as he said, all the sins of the past don't happen, and would work closely with Keith. And I think Keith is a real key at this point. The engineering department's a real key at this point to make sure that we have a solid project, that we move forward in the right way. And we get to the point where instead, if this could be your vision, we're talking about this great project that happened in Branson, Missouri, that served all these millions of people, and it came in on budget, and other folks would like to figure out how to be just like us, as opposed to us talking about the sins of the past, okay? So that structure is going to be in place. And then we've done research, and we have it. We haven't released it yet, but we did concept testing, and Ann guided that with Jerry Henry. I think the good news, and we're going to release it in the right way to the entire community. But I think the good news is we tested 4 concepts, and they all tested better than the average. And so that's very exciting. And it's also foundational because it will, you heard some of these folks who said, we're going to go out, we're going to find out what people want. Well, we're way ahead of that game. And we are going to be able to give them information so that they can hit the ground running. What's our barriers? Well, the barriers are costs. I beat on that today. And also, we're interested in everybody gets excited about the dollars that are going to be spent on 76 creating these cool things that are going to delight our customers. Everybody gets excited about that. And so the approach originally was we would have icons and gateways. And really in fact, you saw some of those pictures, which is the private sector has built the icons on 76. So originally we had somewhere between $7 and $9 million, depending on how you slice and dice it, to do cool things along the whole 5 miles. What we said is, wouldn't it be neat if we had 70 $100,000 items along 76? And so that's kind of been the approach. But here's our barrier. City has almost no land on 76. So we may have to change that, and you all just need to understand that that's part of bringing in a professional firm, third party, to help us look that through. And we believe there are some businesses out there that once they hear that are going to come to us and go, I'd like to have one of those things in front of my property. And so that's going to be part of our barrier. And I think we also have to think about, we're excited about power lines coming down on what we call segment 3 today. But segment 3 still will not be done because the design work on segment 3 and the approach is far different than it's going to be on segment 1 and 2. And we're going to learn some things on segment 1 and 2 that we're going to want to go back and apply to segment 3. And one of those is obvious. We have light poles that we're going to put up that probably no one will like from a design standpoint in the end. And so those are going to have to come back down, and we'll have to put up something that's congruent with the rest of the community. Over time, we'll be able to do that, and I think that's fine. Let's talk about timing. So I did hear we're going to make some decisions February 24th, and here's my suggestion to you. So realistically, we're not going to be doing underground construction. You saw these timelines. We're not going to be doing underground construction until winter of 23. Okay? And so I think one of them presented they'd be done and ready to go to bids in May of 22. But it depends on how disruptive you want to be to the business community. And I'm guessing you don't want to be very disruptive to the business community, especially in July and August and November. So winter of 23. So we have a little bit of time to be thoughtful. And the way we approached this was, this is a $60 million project or an $80 million project. This is not a $50,000 water line. And so the due diligence on this is probably far different than anything that Branson has done before. So that was part of having those three folks here. We're also going to suggest that instead of us making a decision or you making a decision on the 24th, we schedule a day, and if you want to go see a project that these people have done, let's go see a project. If you want to go to their offices, let's go to their offices. And then it's fine if we make a decision in March as to who we want to do. And we have to do it together. This is a cooperative thing. This is good for the community. We're serving the community. And the CID board and the finance committee and the board of aldermen have to work together on this. That wasn't done in the past, okay? And quite frankly, I think sometimes when people disagree with each other, you have great discussion and you probably get to a better answer. And I'm not exactly sure what that structure looks like. Mayor Melton, you might think about that. But I really think that the CID board, the finance committee, and the aldermen need to somehow set up the environment where we can get together and talk freely about our opinions on where we're going, the pros and the cons, and then let's pick it and move on. And the other side of that is I've visited with some of these folks. I've also visited with some folks who have done business with them. You heard up here that they gave some local people that they've done business with. I would encourage you to try to talk to those local people. How did it go? I know that as part of this, the engineering department, Keith and Cheryl, they are going to talk, if they haven't already, going to talk to some of these references that were given to us. But we need to be thoughtful because it's probably, what you're committing to is the largest project that Branson's ever committed to. So let's just do our best. And I think that if we do that, that vision that I gave you of after this project is done becomes reality. And I'm going to pick on Chuck O'Day one more time, which is, they studied that aquarium in great detail, but they knew it was going to be a success before they opened it, before they started construction. And we've got that opportunity as well. Also, I will tell you, I visited with Keith and Cheryl. They have experience with some of these companies, and somehow we need to hear from the staff what that's been like in the past. It's one thing to get up here and do the dog and pony show and be on your best behavior, but I think we need to understand that as well. And sometimes it's all about what we don't know. So I wish you guys knew everything that I knew, but I'm not exactly sure I know the context of how that information gets transferred. Okay, grants. So originally, we were going to try to figure out how to have some construction winter of 22. And we said grants is not a possibility. Because of that, we'll do 1 and 2 without grants, but we want to prepare ourselves to have the grants when we go east of segment 3 to be prepared for the possibility of those grants. If you push the project back to the winter of 23, you might have the opportunity to hit that April deadline next year and actually get some grant money. And why would that possibly be important? Well, costs 4 years ago when we did the budget, or 5 years ago, and today are two different things, and that's very concerning. Now, it's we might have a benefit of seeing those costs come down. But I think that we need to cover our bases on those kind of things. So, and that's one of the reasons I asked questions about the grants. Probably, and Stan touched on this, probably the biggest thing is all of us, whatever firm we pick, they have to have clear expectations. And that's probably the biggest thing that didn't happen last time. There was no clear expectation. And at some point in time, our board, finance committee, and the board of aldermen need to lay out on paper, what's your expectation? So that we can give that to this firm and they know. And I can't emphasize enough last time how we were just, everybody was on the wrong page. So we're going to have to develop those clear expectations, and I'll help remind folks when we get to that point. You know, I'm extremely excited about where we're at. I hope you guys are too. And I don't believe that our residents and our visitors yet understand how good 76 could be on when we take those aftershocks. And is it going to be everything that I like? No. Is it going to be everything that you like? No. Maybe that's not important. What's important is that our residents are proud of it and our customers love it. And that's where we want to get to. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I very much appreciate the opportunity for you guys to allow us to suggest to bring in all three of these firms to talk to. I know your time is very valuable.
Gail, I'll respond real quick on just a few things. I completely agree with everything you just said.
Good.
The difference between the timing, meaning rushing this, or taking our time, doing it right, taking advantage of grants, I think when we look at the end of the day, we would rather go with option B, taking our time, doing it right, and applying for grants. So this one opinion is the trade-offs of trying to rush this and get construction started at the end of '22, if that means we're going to forego the possible opportunities of grants, I would be supportive of utilizing the time. When time is on our side, we tend to have advantages, right? And that's almost anything in life. When time is against you, then we rush, you tend to make mistakes, and that. $60 to $80 million, that's a lot of money. I do have my own vision of what this corridor will look like at the end of 10 years. And I mean, I see it as a landmark. I see it as a Nashville, right? Their Main Street, Fremont in Vegas. I mean, I really see this as a landmark corridor. And there's no reason to rush it. The collaboration, I am 100% supportive of the more minds we get together, we'll all make better decisions. And the team that is on the CID committee, I'm very, very impressed with. And between the CID, our finance department, and the Board of Aldermen, all openly sharing, having discussions, it is okay to agree to disagree. What's important is respecting everybody's opinion. We don't need to fight and bicker and point fingers, but listen to everybody's opinion to come up with the best solution. So again, I'm going to take my hat off to you. Any questions for Gail from the board or the committee?
I'll just make a comment, Gail. For those that aren't on the CID and who's not on finance, I'm just going to put it simply. Anything you get, I want to get it too. It needs to be moved up to the aldermen or staff who are not on CID or finance. Let's all get it at the same time, because it's eventually going to come to us. I'd rather get it in advance with everybody else.
Okay, so I I want to make sure I understand what you just told me, which is communication between us is really, really good.
Correct.
And that's
Yeah.
one thing we want to have happen. And quite frankly, a whole bunch of that happens between the staff. That's where it happens between the finance department, the engineering department, eventually the planning department. But if there's something specific you want, we're happy to give it to you.
Well, it's like the two-pager that you requested.
Yeah,
You
which,
know-
and my apologies, I didn't realize I was breaking a rule by asking for that. It seems well-reasoned to me, so.
Yeah, just kick it up as high as you feel that it needs to go so we get it in advance.
No, I'm fine. I'm
Great.
fine to get that. I'll get that to one of the staff members and have them distribute it to you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so.
Stan, on the legal side, should that two-pager go to CID and that would be part of their recommendation?
Yes.
Because we're supposed to make decisions based on the presentation and the information requested.
Right. It has,
That two-pager that Gail requested
Is-
should not influence our decision.
correct, that's exactly right. Perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
good. Any other comments? Yeah, it should. Somebody turn his mic off.
Well, I do think that, what the approach that the CID board has taken, these are really smart guys, and they're approaching this as though it's their money.
That's right.
What would I do? And sometimes, quite frankly, that's in conflict with the rules and regulations of city government. That's okay, okay? And we just have to understand that. But as far as we can fit into the context of that, we want to do the right things. And what really became obvious is the due diligence on this project is far different than what the city of Branson has gone through before, because this is the biggest project.
Yeah.
And also, it's probably the most visible. So that's the initiative.
Any other comments?
One last thing, Mr. Mayor, and that's all. And Gail, you and I have talked about this. The importance of this project is its visual attractiveness, and they're not going to come all the way to Branson just to see our sidewalks.
That's right.
I mean, it's just not, it's nice, and we had a discussion a little earlier, you heard about they walk so many hundred feet. We've had them complain that they had to walk 35 feet to enter the Engler block versus 25 feet. That is really not a big walking group, but they will do it. The younger group will do it. It's going to be the wow factor, and I think that's where we have to reach our agreement. What's it going to look like, and is it going to knock their socks off? Is it going to be a statue of Clay Cooper at the intersection of 165 and 76? I mean,
Yes,
Was that a motion?
but it's the wow factor, and I appreciate everything you've done there.
and what you said a while ago about having 8 to 10 or a dozen wow factors, as opposed, turn that into multiple. Maybe you're not spending $1 million at 10 locations, but you're spending $1 million at 20 locations. I think that's, you want something every, like you say, every 100 foot instead of every quarter of a mile or something. I totally agree with that. Yeah. Sorry, Rod. Go ahead.
Oh, no, it's good. So just remind me now, so we had mentioned that on the 24th, then we were going to have a conversation or to bring it forward that a decision would be made. So I think that that was the understanding. So I think now we just need to probably back up and talk about that a little bit.
Stan, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, there's two, actually. And while I completely agree with making sure we take time to do things, there is one thing we need to do, and that is get the design, because the design is so critical to getting the grants. Without that design, we can't get certain grants. The second thing I would say is that a lot of the information that the individuals were requested to put in the two-page item, you will find in the full RFQ presentation. You'll also see that they have references in there, and that also on the 24th, Keith and his team will, Keith will present on the findings of the background that they have done on some of the groups. Yeah, and that's part of it you guys aren't aware of as of yet.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
it's again, it's kind of like Gail said about they're ahead of, some of the design firms on, data, and these folks are ahead of all of us on some of those items that you all will need to make a good decision. But you'll have your information that you saw today. You'll have the information that the finance department has provided to you. And on the 24th, you will hear the city staff's recommendation on which firm to go with, as well as the background in reference to background checks and so forth. So I would really, if we could, I would like to stick to the 24th,
Yeah.
because it's, as you heard, it's going to take 9 months to a year for them to design.
Yeah.
Yeah, so think about the timeline. If it's winter of '23, we have time. We could wait till March, it'd be just fine, right, Keith? If we waited to make a decision in March, it would still be just fine to have a shovel in the ground winter of '23.
Don't forget, we also have to then take it to the Board of Aldermen to approve.
Yeah, but what you saw up here, one of these folks said, we'll be done in May of next year. And you've got a month, I believe. I want to make sure he agrees with me. And really, the question is, do you guys want to go see any of their projects? Do you want to have that opportunity? Do you want to have the opportunity to go visit an office?
Let's share that. Anybody on the committee or board have an opinion on that? Do we want to take the time to go visit other projects and visit their offices?
Well, like you say, I mean, these three firms come here bringing, they've got 30 minutes to give us their best stuff. So, I mean, it's easy to put, I could put a compilation together of my best, stuff, but what about all the stuff that you don't want people to know? I mean, I think a little a little more investigation is not a bad thing. I mean, how that happens, I don't know.
Yeah, so not in every case, but quite a few of these projects are local to Branson and Springfield. All the offices are either local or in Springfield of the engineering firms. So, I mean, if you want to do that, do it. The other thing I would tell you, I'm going to sound like an engineer now, and that guy told you that engineers aren't very good communicators. The guys who were here are probably not the guys going to do all the work.
Yeah.
Okay? It'd be kind of nice to see who's.
That's right.
Yeah. So, yeah, go ahead.
As far as a timeline goes, everybody can put lines on paper and show plan and profiles and pretty pictures and everything, but when the rubber meets the road out there, when we start getting easements from people, well, how much are you gonna take up of my property frontage, things like that. Well, send it to me and I'm gonna send it to my attorney. You know how long that kind of stuff takes. It goes round and around, just like when we was doing the CID documents and getting everybody to sign up for that. I mean, we was out on the road knocking on doors, Cheryl and I was, and Stan, and everybody else was out there beating on doors, trying to send it to my attorney, I'll send it to them. That stuff don't happen overnight, we know that. And so it's gonna take a while, even after you get a proposed set of plans put together with some concept drawings. That doesn't mean the detailed drawings, that's just a concept, what you're gonna put where, and how the sidewalk's gonna meander, and the bump outs, and the wow factors, and marrying all that together. It's gonna take time.
Yeah, so Keith, based on the three presentations, the three firms we're looking at, with the information that you and Cheryl have about them, the experience and knowledge you have about them, would you feel comfortable with the presentations, the RFPs that we received, on making a recommendation of who you would recommend?
Yes.
So I think, and that to me carries an awful lot of weight. Hearing from the CID what their opinions are carries weight. But me personally, I will trust the experts to make a recommendation versus me going to see somebody's office or their previous work. And the one point that was made at the end was, it may be more important to ask what projects failed from these firms, not show me your best, show me your worst. Any other comments?
Could we ask Gail that same question you asked Keith? I mean, without saying right now, do you and the CID have like the mayor said, based off what you know as of today, which one of these firms you would go with?
So I think we have a group of folks who each has their own opinion today and has not sat down and said, can we come to consensus on the opinion? I kind of think that Keith and I agree, but I don't know that.
Yeah.
And so that is a discussion of the CID board, which we're happy to have.
Yeah.
To say, this is what we think. And really, I mean, that's what I can't, so get your arms around it this way. The aldermen need to have that same discussion. The finance committee needs to have that same discussion. It would be wonderful if all three of us thought the same thing. I think that's rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
I think we got to have a discussion, which is okay. All right, it's okay to have that discussion. But the CID board needs to have that discussion before we can come back and have,
Yep.
and give you, this is who we think makes sense, and here's why.
But you independently, Gail Myers, you have a pretty good idea in your heart who you think, right?
I do.
mean, yeah, okay.
So I say, I agree with Stan. I say we shoot for the 24th. Let's see what the recommendations come in at and what the different opinions are. And shoot for that date. And if something comes up and we're not in agreement on the 24th, we'll deal with that at the time.
Mayor, I want to add one more comment. My direction has been to follow our city code book. Follow the city code. If you don't like it, we need to look at proposing it to you all to change it. Sections 2-381 through 385 outlines how we are supposed to choose a professional company for professional service, whether that's architect, engineers, what Jamie does for the audit. Had a hard word there. I don't count money every day. But anyway, so that's the progression we are taking in this approach. We go out with RFQs, you know, we get them in, we review them, we grade them, we got certain criteria. The criteria in our city code is exactly what's in these RFQs that go out the door to engineering companies or architect firms. So that's the process we are following right there. And I believe it's section 2-384 that outlines that specific paragraph, what we have to follow. So that's where, you know, I've been directed to do.
Yeah, and I think the guidance from what you're saying, following the codes, is what the board needs to hear. Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody else?
The obvious question, are we following that so far?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so what does my little cheat sheet say? I need to ask for a motion to adjourn? Yeah, okay, so for the Board of Aldermen, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
In a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And for the Finance Committee, I would entertain a motion to adjourn that meeting.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Ayes have it. Thank you all very much. This is exciting time for our city.
And Your Honor, everything